Hey guys, tonight we are going on a little trip. Not to a pristine beach or a quiet mountain cabin, but back in time, to a place of red bricks, black smoke, and, well, questionable life choices. We're diving head first into the world of the Industrial Revolution, seen through the eyes of its smallest, most overlooked participants. Let's be honest, if you were actually dropped into this world, with your modern sensibilities about germs and personal space, you might not survive the first day. It's a world that's loud, crowded, and smells a bit funky. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It truly helps. And in the comments below, let me know what city you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you're aware of is the jolting. It's not a gentle sway, but a constant, rhythmic rattling that seems to vibrate right through your bones. You are curled up on a rough wooden cart, nestled between a lumpy sack of potatoes and your mother's legs. A single, scratchy-wool blanket is pulled up to your chin, but it does little to stop the damp chill of the preheat-on air from seeping in. You crack open an eye. The sky is a pale, washed-out gray, not yet committed to being morning. The world around you is a blur of green and brown. This is the only world you have ever known: rolling fields, stone walls that have stood for generations, and the familiar, earthy smell of damp oil and livestock. But today, that smell feels different. It feels like a memory already. Your father sits at the front of the cart, next to a grim-faced man you don't know, the one who owns the horse and cart. Your father hasn't said much for hours. He just stares ahead, down the muddy, deeply rutted track that you could hardly call a road. These aren't the smooth, paved roads of our imagination. This is a journey of incredible slowness, where a wheel getting stuck in a foot-deep trench of mud is not an emergency, but a routine part of the day. A trip that might take us 2 hours in a car could take you 2 full days of this bone-shaking progress. You shift, trying to get more comfortable on the hard planks. Then you look back. You can just make out the shape of the cottage you left. Now just a small gray box against the green hills. You see the fields your family used to work. A patchwork quilt of different shades of green. But now, no, sharp lines of fences and hedges cut across them. The common land, the place where your family could graze its once scrawny pig, is gone. Enclosed by a stone wall your own father was paid a pittance to help build last year. That's the great, silent irony that pushed you onto this cart. The very work that was supposed to help you survive ended up erasing your way of life. This is a court, Ruth of your time. The land is changing. For centuries, life was tied to the seasons and the soil. Now, it's tied to fences, ownership, and pieces of paper you'll never see. Historians, of course, still love to debate the exact reasons your family and thousands of others are making this journey. Was it pure, stark desperation, with starvation as the only alternative, or was there a flicker of hope? A whisper of a new kind of life in the city, with steady wages and opportunities you couldn't dream of in the countryside. Listening to your parents' hushed, anxious whispers last night, you suspect the truth is a messy, uncomfortable mix of both. They weren't just running from something, they were running towards a promise they weren't even sure was real. A few more hours pass. The sun is higher now, but it provides little warmth. Your breakfast was a cold, hard chunk of bread that you chewed on for what felt like an hour. You're bored, you're sore, and then you smell it. At first, it's faint, just a strange sharpness in the air that cuts through the familiar scent of earth and rain. It's not a smell from nature. It's acrid, metallic, and slightly bitter. You wrinkle your nose. Your mother, noticing, just pulls the blanket a little tighter around you. She smells it too. It's the first greeting from your new home. It's the smell of coal, thousands upon thousands of fires, in homes and in the bellies of colossal machines, all breathing out the same gray, dusty breath. The cart creaks to the top of a low hill, and the driver points a finger. There she is. He grunts. You follow his gaze, expecting, you don't know what, the town, perhaps bigger than the village you know. What you see stops your breath. It's not a town, it's a stain on the horizon. The sprawling, low-lying city of dark, reddish-brown, huddled under a permanent, thick blanket of grayish-yellow smoke, sticking up out of the smoke, like a forest of dead trees, are chimneys, hundreds of them, tall, thin, and black, each one puffing a steady stream of more smoke into the already choked sky. The gentle quiet of the countryside is gone, replaced by a low, constant hum that you can feel in your chest even from this distance. It's the sound of machines. It's the sound of your future. The green fields are behind you now. You are at the gates of the modern world. The cart begins its slow, bumpy descent. Then the world of green is swallowed whole by the world of red and black. As you get closer, the low hum you heard from the hills separates into 1,000 different noises. It's a symphony of industry, and none of the instruments are playing in tune. There's the clatter of iron-rimmed wheels on an even stone, the sharp crack of a whip, the distant, rhythmic pounding of a steam hammer, and a constant, underlying rumble that seems to come from the very ground beneath you. You are now inside the forest of chimneys. The streets, if you can call them that, are nothing like the country lane you left. They are narrow canyons carved between rows of identical brick buildings. There's no sidewalk to speak of, just a narrow, raised stone here and there. The middle of the street is a treacherous sea of mud, horse manure, and things you don't even want to identify. People are everywhere, not the familiar faces of your village, where you knew everyone by name, but a swarm of strangers. Their faces are smudged with soot. Their clothes are shades of gray and brown, and no one makes eye contact. They move with a hurried, determined pace, as if they are all slightly late for something very important. Your father pays the cart driver, his hand disappearing into a small pouch and coming out with a few precious coins. The man grunts, not even a thank you, and with a flick of the reins, he and his horse are gone, swallowed by the crowd, leaving your small family here, your parents, and a couple of lumpy sacks standing on the edge of the chaos. There is no welcome sign, no one to greet you. You are just one more drop of water in an overflowing river. You crane your neck to look up. The buildings are only 2 or 3 stories high, but they feel immense because the street is so narrow, and they are all made of the same thing, a dark, reddish-brown brick, stained black in patches by a relentless rain of soot. The uniformity is dizzying. Every window, every door, every roofline is a repetition of the last. It's as if someone discovered a single, cheap, easy way to build and then just couldn't be bothered to think of a second idea. It's efficient. You have to give it that. But it's not beautiful. This brick and soot aesthetic is the defining feature of your new world. Historians would later point out that this mass production of cheap, durable brick was a technological revolution in itself, allowing cities to expand at a terrifying rate. It was a practical solution to house a population that was exploding around the factories. You notice something else about the buildings. The windows are tiny. They look like small, dark eyes staring out from the brick faces of the houses. They seem deliberately designed to let in as little light as possible. This wasn't just a matter of style or saving money on glass, though that was part of it. It's a strange, lingering ghost of a truly bizarre policy, the window tax. For over a century, in places like England, the government taxed houses based on the number of windows they had. It was meant to be a kind of property tax, on the assumption that only the rich could afford lots of windows. But the consequence for the poor was that builders would construct homes with the absolute minimum number of windows required to avoid the tax, often bricking up existing ones, while the tax itself might be gone or on its way out by the time you arrive. Its architectural DNA is baked into the very bones of the city, condemning generations to live in perpetual gloom. You follow your father, your hand clutching your mother's dress. He navigates the street not by looking at signs, there are none. You can see, but by counting the turnings. The air here is thick. You can feel it on your skin. A slightly greasy film. The smell of coal smoke is now so overpowering it stings the back of your throat. But it's mixed with other, less definable scents, the sharp tang of raw sewage from the open gutters running along the sides of the street. The smell of unwashed bodies packed closely together. The faint, sweetish smell of rot. You look up at the sky, or where the sky should be. You can't see it. The smoke from the hundreds of chimneys has merged with the low-hanging clouds to create a permanent, brownish-gray ceiling. The sun is just a pale, hazy dusk, its light struggling to pierce the industrial haze. You realize with a start that you might live here for days, even weeks, without ever feeling the direct warmth of the sun on your face. This sprawling, chaotic, seemingly unplanned cityscape is a subject that historians still argue about. Was this grim environment simply the result of rapid, profit-driven growth, where human well-being wasn't even a secondary consideration, or was there a kind of brutal logic to it all? Some argue that the entire layout, with its dense warrens of streets backed right against the factory walls, was intentionally designed to keep the workforce as a contained, easily accessible resource, a human battery for the machines. The debate isn't really about whether it was a terrible place to live, everyone agrees on that, but about the precise flavor of indifference that created it. Was it thoughtless chaos? Or was it a calculated, dehumanizing efficiency? Your father stops abruptly. HES looking at a building that is indistinguishable from all the others. A dark wooden door, a small window next to it, and two more small windows on the floor above. It looks no more or less welcoming than any other. This is it, he says, his voice low. He pushes the door open, and you are hit with a wave of stale, damp air. You peer past his legs into the darkness beyond. This is your new home. The forest of red brick and black smoke has led you here, to this specific dark corner, and as you step over the threshold, you leave the last traces of the green, open world behind for good. You step inside, and your eyes take a moment to adjust to the gloom. This single, small window at the front does very little to illuminate the space. The room is small, shockingly so. Back in your country cottage, you had two small rooms, which had felt cramped. This is one single room that is to be your family's entire world: kitchen, living room, and bedroom, all rolled into one. The floor is made of packed earth, cold and slightly damp under your thin shoes. You can see patches of darker earth where moisture is seeping up from the ground below. There are no floorboards, no rugs, just the bare, chilly dirt. The walls are brick, like the outside, but here they are coated with a thin layer of what might have once been whitewash, now peeling unstained with brownish streaks of damp. In one corner, you can see a patch of dark, fuzzy mold creeping its way up towards the ceiling. Your father drops the heavy sacks onto the floor with a dull thud. The sound echoes slightly in the small space. Your mother stands in the doorway for a moment, her face a mask of weary resignation. She takes a deep breath of the stale air and then gets to work. There's no time for despair. Survival is a series of immediate, practical tasks. The room's furniture is sparse, and it's already here, left by the previous tenants. There's a crude wooden table with 3 legs, the fourth propped up on a loose brick. A couple of wobbly stools. In the far corner, a small, rusty iron stove with a pipe leading up into the chimney. This is your hearth, the center of your new home. Against the back wall is the largest piece of furniture, a single, wide, low bed frame, on which sits a thin, lumpy mattress. It's stuffed with straw. You can tell by the way it rustles, and it smells faintly of dust and someone else's sleep. This one bed is for all of you. You will learn the strange intimacy of this arrangement very quickly. Sleep is not a private affair. It's a tangle of limbs, a shared warmth against the constant damp chill. You'll get used to the sound of your father's snoring, your mother's restless turning. Privacy is a luxury you can't even conceive of, like owning a horse or eating meat every day. You wander over to the fireplace. There's a small pile of coal next to it. A welcome sight. Fuel is everything. Your mother is already checking the sacks. One contains your few spare clothes and the family's one good blanket. The other holds the essentials: a small bag of oats, a few more potatoes, a block of lard wrapped in greasy paper, a tin of tea, and a precious bag of sugar. This is your larder. There is no pantry, no cupboard. The food will just live in its sack on the floor. This living situation, a whole family crammed into a single room, was the norm for newcomers to the industrial city. Historians and social reformers of the time, like Friedrich Engels, documented these conditions in grim detail. It wasn't just about the lack of space, it was about the complete breakdown of traditional family structures and privacies. These weren't homes, they were human warehouses. And now for a little detail you might not think about: the smell. It's not just the damp, it's the smell of everything, all at once, with no escape. The smell of cooking, mostly boiling potatoes or porridge, will mingle with the smell of unwashed bodies. The lingering odor from the chamber pot that will be kept under the bed. The dampness in the walls, and the ever-present soot that drifts in from the window and down the chimney. There is no escape. The air in your home will be a thick, soupy mixture of all the scents of your life. You reach out and touch the wall. It's cold and clammy. You notice that near the floor, the brick is darker and seems almost wet. This is because your new home is likely built on ground with little to no drainage. The city grew so fast that houses were thrown up on any available patch of land, often in marshy areas or right next to polluted canals. The concept of a damp-proof course, a basic feature of modern construction, was an unheard of luxury. This constant dampness isn't just uncomfortable, it's a breeding ground for illness. The question of why people accepted these conditions is something scholars still pick apart. Was it simply that it was better than the alternative: starvation in the countryside, or was there a genuine lack of understanding about hygiene and its connection to health? The germ theory of disease was still in its infancy, a controversial idea discussed by a few scientists, not common knowledge for the average person. For your family, the immediate concern isn't microscopic bacteria, it's the gnawing hunger in your belly and the need for a roof, any roof, over your head. The long-term health consequences of living in a damp, moldy room are an invisible threat compared to the very visible threat of having no home at all. They might vaguely understand that such conditions aren't good, but the why is a mystery. They attribute the constant coughs and fevers to bad air or miasma, a plausible but incorrect theory of the time. Your mother has managed to get a small fire going in the stove. The flicker of orange light pushes back the gloom and offers a tiny pocket of warmth. She puts a pot of water on to boil. She doesn't smile, but the set of her jaws softens slightly. They fire. A pot on the stove. These are the small rituals that make a space a home, no matter how grim. You sit on one of the wobbly stools, pulling the scratchy blanket around your shoulders, and watch the flames. The room is still cold, the air is still thick, and the sounds of the city still press in from outside. But for this brief moment, you are still. You are inside. This is home now. A single room, with a dirt floor and a leaky wall, shared with your entire family. And tomorrow, you will have to learn how to live in it. The first morning in your new home begins before the sun is even a rumor. You're woken not by a rooster's crow, but by a loud, clanging bell from a nearby factory. It's a harsh, metallic sound that cuts through the thin walls and seems to shake the very air. This is the city's alarm clock, calling its workers to the machines. Your father is already up, pulling on his boots in the semi-darkness. There's no gentle waking here. Sleep is a brief pause, and the day begins with a jolt. Your mother is also awake, her first task of the day laid out before her. She hands you 2 wooden buckets. "Go on," she says, her voice still thick with sleep. "Be quick about it. The line will be long." This is your first real chore in the city. You are being sent for water. Back in the country, you had a well not far from the cottage, or you could go to the stream. The water was clear, cold, and you could take as much as you needed. You are about to learn that in the city, water is a commodity, and it is neither clean nor convenient. You push open the heavy door and step out into the street. It's even colder than yesterday, and a fine, misty drizzle is falling, turning the soot in the air into a gray slurry that coats every surface. The street is already teeming with people, mostly women and children, all carrying buckets, pots, or jugs. They are all heading in the same direction. You join the silent, shuffling procession. You turn a corner and see at the source of the neighborhood's water. It's not a well or a fountain, but a single, iron stand pipe sticking out of the ground, with a large, heavy lever on the side. This is the public water pump, and as your mother predicted, there is already a line. A long, winding queue of at least 30 people snakes away from it. You take your place at the very end. The 2 buckets feel heavy already, and you haven't even filled them. The ground around the pump is a churned-up mess of mud and overflowing water. A permanent puddle, slick with grime, surrounds the base. You watch the process. A person steps up, places their bucket under the spout, and then has to throw their entire body weight onto the iron lever. Again and again, to coax a gushing stream of water out. It looks like hard work. The wait is long and cold. There's very little conversation. People just stand, shivering slightly, their faces impassive. This is a daily ritual, a tedious but essential part of life. You start to notice the state of the buckets everyone is carrying. They are dented, rusty. Some have wooden planks shoved in to cover holes. They are precious, well-used objects. This is the reality of urban water supply in the early industrial age. While wealthy districts might have had water piped directly into their homes, the working-class neighborhoods relied on these communal pumps. Often, a single pump would serve several hundred people. The water itself was often supplied by a private company, which would turn the water on for only a few hours each day. If you missed your window, you had no water until tomorrow. This is why the morning rush is so frantic. Finally, it's your turn. You drag your buckets to the front. They feel impossibly heavy to lift up to the spout, but a woman behind you gives you a hand without a word. You grab the iron lever. It's cold and slick with grime. You have to use both hands and all your strength to push it down. A pathetic trickle comes out. You try again, putting your whole body into it. This time, a decent stream of water splashes into your bucket. It's surprisingly loud. You work the pump, back and forth, until the first bucket is full, then the second. Now comes the hard part, carrying them back. Each bucket is sloshing with water, and together they weigh nearly as much as you do. You have to walk slowly, carefully, to avoid spilling the precious contents. Your arms ache, and the cold wooden handles dig into your small hands. As you trudge back, you can't help but look at the water you've worked so hard to get. It's not clear. It's a cloudy, pale brown, with tiny specks of something floating in it. This water comes directly from the same polluted rivers that the factories are dumping their waste into. It might be drawn from a point upstream, and it might pass through some rudimentary filter, but it is far from clean. This is the water you will drink. This is the water your food will be cooked in. This is the water you will use to wash. The connection between this dirty water and diseases like cholera and typhoid was one of the most important and hardest won scientific discoveries of the 19th century. Men like John Snow would famously trace a cholera outbreak in London to a single contaminated water pump on Broad Street. That for you, standing in a muddy street with aching arms. This science is a world away. You just know that people get sick. They get stomach fevers. Why, who knows? It's just a fact of life. This is another area where historians debate the consciousness of the people at the time. Did they know the water was dangerous? They certainly knew it was dirty. and they knew people got sick. But the direct, causal link that this water causes that disease was a conceptual leap that most had not yet made. They might have preferred cleaner water if it were an option, but it wasn't. This was the only water there was. As a strange aside, the people of the time were often more worried about the hardness of the water than its purity. Hard water, full of minerals, made it difficult to get a good lather with the crude soap of the day, making washing clothes an even more back-breaking task. They would complain bitterly about the quality of the water for washing, while unknowingly drinking a cocktail of industrial and biological contaminants. You finally make it back to your room. Your arms feel like they are going to fall off. You slosh the 2 buckets onto the floor, spilling a little of the murky water onto the dirt. Your mother doesn't scold you. She just nods. Her face grim, she takes a ladle, scoops some of the water into the pot for porridge, and puts it on the fire. You've completed your first task. You have provided for the family. You've brought home the day's supply of cloudy, contaminated, essential water, and you will do it again tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. After a meager breakfast of watery porridge, the cloudy water, you fetched, adding a slightly earthy, gritty texture your father puts on his coat. It's time. HES not going alone. HES taking you with him. Your mother doesn't protest, her face is set like stone. This was always the plan. In this new world, every member of the family who can walk and follow an instruction is a potential earner. And you, with your small, nimble fingers, are a valuable asset. You follow him back out into the damp, gray streets. The morning is a little brighter now, but the air is thicker with smoke, as every factory and home has its fire going. The crowds are denser, a torrent of humanity flowing in one direction. You have to walk fast to keep up with your father's long strides, your hand clutching the rough fabric of his coat. He leads you to a building that makes your single-room home look like a doll's house. It's a colossal block of red brick, at least 5 stories high and stretching down the entire length of the street. Its walls are window after window, hundreds of them, all glowing with a faint yellow light from within. A huge, tall chimney rises from its center, belching a thick, continuous river of black smoke into the sky. The low hum you've been hearing since you arrived is loudest here. It's a deep, guttural, hungry sound. This is a textile mill. This is where you are going to work. A crowd of people, mostly women and children, are gathered around a large wooden gate. A stern-looking man with a clipboard and a very important-looking hat stands beside it. HES the overseer, or maybe a clerk. He isn't hiring everyone, just picking and choosing from the crowd. It's not a job interview, it's more like a livestock auction. Your father pushes his way to the front, pulling you with him. Looking for work for the lad, he says, his voice trying to sound strong and confident. He puts a hand on your shoulder. The man with the clipboard looks down at you. His eyes scan you from head to toe, not with any kindness or curiosity, but with the appraising glance of a man checking a tool for defects. HES, not looking at a child. HES looking at a set of hands, a pair of legs, a small body that can fit into tight spaces. How old? The man asks, his voice flat. 9. Your father lies. You are 7. But 9 is a better age, an age that suggests a little more strength, a little less likely to cry for your mother. You stay silent, trying to look older, stronger. The man grunts. He reaches out and grabs your hand, not to shake it, but to inspect it. He turns it over, feeling your fingers. HES checking for size, for nimbleness. Your hands are small, perfect for the tasks he has in mind. He'll do, the man says, not to your father, but to the air. Name. Your father gives your name, and the man scrawls something in a large, leather-bound ledger. He doesn't ask you to sign anything. The ability to read or write is not a requirement. In fact, it's probably a disadvantage. However, a strange and often overlooked aspect of this process was the parish apprentice system. For many children, especially orphans or those whose families were on poor relief. This wasn't a choice at all. They were essentially sold by the parish authorities to factory owners, carted off in wagons to distant mills where they lived in dormitories and worked for nothing more than their keep. Your hiring is, in its own way, a step up from that. You are a free laborer. You will be paid a wage, however small. Historians still debate the complex motivations behind child labor. It wasn't just about greedy factory owners, though they were certainly a huge part of it. For families like yours, the child's wage, no matter how tiny, could be the difference between eating and not eating. It was a brutal economic reality. The entire family unit was recalibrated for industrial survival. Parents weren't necessarily unfeeling they were making impossible choices in a system that offered no good options. The argument wasn't should my child work or play. It was should my child work, or should we all starve? The man with the clipboard now turns his attention to you. Listen close, he says, his voice sharp. You start now. Be here when the bell rings in the morning. Leave when the bell rings at night. No slacking, no talking, no crying. You do what the overseer tells you. When he tells you, understand? You nod, your throat too tight to speak. He gestures towards the massive wooden gate, which is now open just enough for people to file through. In you go. They'll show you what to do. Your father gives your shoulder a squeeze. It's meant to be reassuring, but it feels tense. Be a good lad, he whispers, and then he turns and walks away, disappearing back into the crowd to find his own work, probably as a general laborer in a dockyard or on a construction site. You are alone. You take a deep breath of the sooty air and walk towards the gate. You are one of several children, some older, some who look even younger than you, all with the same wide-eyed, slightly terrified expression. You step through the gate and into the factory yard. The noise is louder here. The ground is black with coal dust. You've just been hired. There was no contract, no discussion of pay, no mention of safety. You simply exchanged your name for a place inside the belly of the machine. The gate closes behind you with a heavy thud. You are no longer just a child. You are a worker, and you're about to learn what that means. You are herded with the other new children through another door, and the world outside vanishes completely. The change is instantaneous and overwhelming. If the city was a symphony of noise, this is a single, deafening chord held at maximum volume. It's a physical force that hits you in the chest, a continuous, pounding, clattering, roaring thunder that vibrates through the wooden floor, up your legs, and into your skull. You instinctively clap your hands over your ears, but it does nothing to soften the assault. The sound is inside you now. You are standing on the main floor of a weaving shed. The room is vast, a forest of iron and wood. Stretching away into the distance are rows upon rows of power looms, hundreds of them, all working in frantic, synchronized motion. Wooden shuttles carrying the thread, or weft, are fired across the looms at incredible speeds, a blur of motion too fast for your eye to follow. The air is thick with a white haze. It's not smoke, but cotton dust, tiny fibers floating everywhere, catching in the dim light that filters through the grimy, high windows. It gets in your nose, in your mouth, on your eyelashes. You cough, a dry, tickling cough that you can't even hear over the noise. An older, sour-faced woman grabs you by the arm and pulls you forward. She shouts something in your ear. You can't make out the words, just a loud, distorted yelling. She points, jabs a finger, and demonstrates. You realize she is your teacher. There's no training manual, no orientation week. Your education will be swift, sharp, and punctuated by prods and shoves. You learn that your job is not to operate these terrifyingly complex machines. That's for the adults, mostly women, who stand between the looms, their faces blank with concentration, their bodies moving in a practiced, hypnotic dance with the rhythm of their machines. Your job is something much smaller, and, in a way, much more dangerous. You are a pisar. Your task is to patrol a set of spinning mules in another, equally loud room. These are long, low machines that spin raw cotton into thread. The machines are constantly working, and the fine cotton threads are constantly snapping. Your job is to spot a broken thread, and with a quick, darting movement of your fingers, grab the two broken ends and tie them back together in a tiny, perfect knot. The woman demonstrates. Her fingers are a blur. A thread snaps before the broken end can be wound onto the spool. Her hand darts in, snatches it, finds the other end, and with a flick of the wrist, they are joined. The machine never stops. It doesn't even slow down. Now it's your turn. You stand before the whirring, clicking machine. It's intimidating. A thread breaks right in front of you. You hesitate for a second, and the woman gives you a sharp poke in the ribs. You reach in. The parts are moving fast. You try to mimic her actions, fumbling with the thin, almost invisible thread. Your fingers feel clumsy and slow. You miss it. The broken thread is wound away onto the spindle. Lost. The woman groans in frustration and shoves you aside, her own hands fixing it in a flash. She shoves you back in front of the machine. Try again. This is your world, now a constant state of high alert. Your eyes scanning dozens of threads at once. Your body poised to move. The noise is a constant companion, a solid wall of sound that isolates you completely. You can't talk to the child working next to you. You can't ask a question. You can't cry out if you hurt yourself. You are in a world without spoken words. Only the language of the machines and the sharp jab of the overseer. One of the odd, and frankly terrifying, details of this environment was the temperature. The rooms were kept deliberately hot and humid. The heat and moisture helped to prevent the cotton threads from snapping so frequently. So, on top of the noise and the dust, you are also sweating profusely in the sweltering, damp air. It's like working in a tropical jungle made of iron. Historians often focus on the long hours and low pay, but this sensory overload is a crucial part of the experience. It was profoundly disorienting and isolating. The debate here isn't about whether it was bad, but about the psychological impact. Did this constant, overwhelming noise contribute to a sense of dissociation, a way of mentally checking out just to survive the shift? Some accounts from the period describe workers who seemed almost deaf and emotionally numb, their personalities worn down by the sheer mechanical force of their environment. They weren't just physically tired, they were sensorially exhausted. As you fumble with another broken thread, you start to understand the brutal logic of your hiring. An adult's hands are too large and clumsy for this delicate work. You, with your small, nimble fingers, are the perfect tool for the job. You are a human component of the machine, as essential as any gear or spindle. The factory owner wasn't hiring a child, he was hiring a specific set of small, fast-moving fingers. A bell rings, a sound barely audible over the general din. A group of even smaller children, some who look no older than 5 or 6, scurry past you. They are the scavengers. You watch in horror as they crawl underneath the active, moving machinery to pick up loose scraps of cotton from the floor. The heavy carriages of the spinning mules would run back and forth on their tracks, and the scavengers had to time their movements perfectly, darting in and out, to avoid being crushed. It was one of the most dangerous jobs in the mill. Seeing them makes your own job as a piece seem almost safe in comparison. You spend hours in this state of frantic concentration. Your back starts to ache from stooping. Your eyes burn from staring at the threads. The cotton dust coats your throat, making you constantly want to cough. The noise has become a dull, permanent headache. You don't think about your home, your parents, or the green fields. You can't. There is no room for any thought beyond the next broken thread. The machine demands your complete and undivided attention, and you give it, because the alternative is a sharp rap on the knuckles or a shove from the overseer. This isn't just work. It's a battle for survival against a relentless, iron opponent. Your focus is entirely on the threads, a hypnotic dance of white lines. But then, your overseer, the sour-faced woman, grabs your shoulder and points downwards. She doesn't say a word, just points insistently at the floor beneath the massive, churning spitting mule. You peer down into the dark, greasy space under the machine. This is the other part of your job. You are not just a piecer, you are also a cleaner. The air may be full of cotton dust, but much of it, combined with grease and oil from the machinery's joints, settles on the floor, creating a thick, fluffy, grimy carpet. This buildup, known as fluff, is not just messy, it's a fire hazard. It needs to be cleared regularly. And just like the scavengers who collect the usable scraps, someone has to get under there and clean out this oily waste. That someone is you. The machine does not stop for cleaning. The concept of shutting down a valuable, profit-making machine for something as trivial as safety or convenience is utterly alien. The cleaning has to happen while it is in full, thunderous operation. The space is impossibly tight. An adult could never fit, but you, with your small, child-sized body. Kim, the woman gives you a shove, indicating it's time. You hesitate. You look at the moving parts just a few feet above the floor, the pounding gears, the spinning shafts, the heavy carriage of the mule that slides back and forth on its track. It's a mechanical monster's underbelly. Taking a shallow, dusty breath, you get down on your hands and knees and crawl into the darkness. The floor is slick with oil. The noise is somehow even worse down here, echoing undamplified in the enclosed space. You can feel the vibration of the machine through the floor. A constant, powerful tremor. It's warm, and the air is thick with the smell of hot metal and grease. Your job is to use your bare hands to scoop up the oily fluff and push it out into the aisle where it can be collected. There are no brushes, no tools. Your hands are the tools. You begin to scrape at the floor. The fluff is soft but greasy, sticking to your fingers and palms, getting under your nails. Within minutes, your hands and forearms are coated in a black, sticky residue. You have to lie almost flat on your belly to get to the parts deeper in. The ceiling of your little cave is a terrifying landscape of moving iron. You are acutely aware of the main carriage of the spinning mule. It rolls out over you, casting a deeper shadow, and then rolls back, revealing the dim light of the main room again. You learn its rhythm quickly. You have to. You learn to pull your hands back an instant before a piece of machinery passes over them. You learn to keep your head down, to make yourself as small and flat as possible. This is perhaps the most visceral and shocking image of child labor from this era. The idea of a small child working underneath a powerful, active machine is horrifying to us, but it was a daily, accepted reality in the mills. It was the most efficient solution to a practical problem. The debate among historians here often revolves around the question of awareness. Did the mill owners and overseers know how dangerous this was? Of course they did. Accidents were common. Children were maimed, losing fingers, limbs, or even their lives. But from a cold, economic perspective, the children were seen as replaceable. There was always another desperate family arriving from the countryside, another child to take the place of one who was injured. One of the more peculiar and sad details that emerged from parliamentary reports investigating these conditions was the effect this had on the children's bodies. The constant stooping, crawling, and contorted positions required for scavenging and cleaning could lead to lifelong physical deformities. Knock knees, spinal curvature, and stunted growth were common occupational hazards for factory children. Their skeletons were literally being shaped by the machines they served. You keep working, your world reduced to the oily floor in front of you and the rhythmic, threatening movement of the machine above. You don't think about the danger in a conceptual way. You can't afford to be scared. Your entire consciousness is focused on the immediate, physical reality. Scrape, push, pull back hand, wait for the carriage, repeat. It's a state of pure, primal survival. After what feels like an eternity, you've cleared a section. You crawl back out into the aisle, blinking in the relatively bright light of the main room. You are filthy. Your clothes, your face, your hands are covered in a layer of black, greasy cotton waste. You look at your hands. The grime is so thick you can't see your own skin. The overseer gives you a curt nod. No praise, just an acknowledgement that the task is done. She points back to the spinning threads. Break time is over. Your job as a cleaner is done for now. It's time to be a peaceor again. You wipe your greasy hands on your trousers. There's no other way to clean them on. Turn back to the threads. The fine, white cotton feels strange against your sticky fingers. You tie a knot. The grease from your hands transfers to the thread, leaving a tiny, dark smudge. You know you're not supposed to. That clean thread is important, but there is nothing you can do about it. The dirt is part of you now. It's the uniform of your profession, a second skin you will wear from the moment you crawl under the machine until the final bell rings. The day grinds on, a seemingly endless cycle of noise, dust, and frantic work. You don't know what time it is. The hazy light from the high, dirty windows changes so little that it's no help. The only clock you have is the gnawing emptiness in your stomach. It's been hours since your watery porridge, and your body is crying out for fuel. Suddenly, a bell rings. It's a different tone from the morning bell. A brief, clanging signal. For a moment, you think the day is over. A surge of hopeful relief washing over you. But it's not. The machines don't stop. The noise doesn't cease. This is the signal for the midday meal. There is no cafeteria, no break room, no designated area to sit and eat. The concept of a protected, clean space for a meal is a fantasy. You eat where you work. The adults, the weavers and spinners, simply step back from their machines for a few moments, leaning against a wall or a pillar. You and the other children do the same, finding a small patch of floor out of the direct path of the overseers. You reach into your pocket. This morning, your mother wrapped your lunch in a small piece of cloth and tucked it away. You pull it out. It's a single, thick slice of dark, heavy bread. It's not the soft, hairy bread we know today. It's dense, coarse, and slightly sour. This is the staple food of the urban poor. It's cheap, it's filling, and it travels well. You unwrap it. The surface of the bread is covered in the same things that cover you, a fine layer of white cotton dust and dark specks of greasy fluff from the factory floor. There's no way to avoid it. The air is thick with the stuff. It settles on everything, including your food. You try to wipe it off with your hand, but your hand is just as dirty, smeared with the black grease from under the machines. You just end up smudging the grime into the bread. You take a bite. The bread is tough and dry. You have to chew for a long time. As you eat, you can taste the grit of the factory. It's a flavor you will become intimately familiar with, the blandness of the bread, mixed with the slightly metallic taste of oil and the chalky texture of cotton dust. This is your lunch. There is no drink to go with it, unless you risk a sip of water from the factory's cistern, which is rumored to be even fouler than the pump water at home. Most workers just endure the thirst. The lunch break is brutally short, maybe 20 to 30 minutes at most. Just enough time to cram down your food before you're expected to be back at your post. Some factories didn't even have a designated break. Workers would have to eat while monitoring their machines, a dangerous practice called time cribbing. If an overseer caught you not paying attention while you ate, your food could be taken away or you could be fined. A fascinating, if grim, detail about factory food comes from the records of social investigators. They noted that the bread wasn't always just bread. To make it cheaper, lighter, or heavier, unscrupulous bakers would sometimes add adulterants. Things like chalk, alum-chemical salt, or even plaster dust were mixed into the flour. So, the gritty texture of your bread might not just be from the factory floor, it could have been baked right in. You are, in a very real sense, eating stones with your bread. Historians debate the nutritional impact of such a diet. It's obviously terrible by our standards, but how did it compare to the rural diet they left behind in the countryside? Food could be seasonal and scarce. A bad harvest could mean starvation. In the city, the food was monotonous and poor quality, but it was usually available, as long as you had the wages to pay for it. The debate isn't whether the diet was good, but whether it represented a marginal improvement in caloric security, even as it declined in quality and freshness. For your body, it's a simple equation. The calories from this gritty bread are just enough to keep you standing, to keep you working until the final bell rings. It's fuel, not food. You see other children eating their lunches. Some have bread like you. A few lucky ones have a lump of cheese or a cold boiled potato. One very small boy, a scavenger, has nothing. He is just sitting, watching the others eat with wide, hungry eyes. No one shares. There isn't enough to share. Every worker, even the smallest, is an island, responsible for their own survival. You finish your last bite of bread. The gnawing in your stomach has subsided to a dull ache. It's not satisfaction, just the temporary silencing of a complaint. The overseer is already walking the aisles, her eyes sharp, her presence a clear signal that the break is over. You wipe your hands on your trousers again, the grease and crumbs making another dark smear. You turn back to the spinning mule, to the endless parade of threads. The brief pause is over. Your body has been refueled with dusty bread, and now it must return to serving the machine. The thunderous noise, which had momentarily receded into the background of your consciousness while you were focused on eating, comes rushing back to the forefront. The rest of the day stretches before you, a mere image of the morning. A long, grey road of noise and dust leading to the final bell. The afternoon wears on, a blur of repetitive motion. Your mind, unable to wander or rest, locks onto the rhythm of the work, but your body has other needs. The watery porridge from breakfast and the dry bread from lunch have made their way through your system. You have to go to the toilet. In the world you left behind, this was a simple matter. You'd slip out behind the cottage to the small, dug-out privy, or simply find a discreet bush in the fields. It was private and easy. Here, inside the roaring factory, nothing is easy, and nothing is private. You look around for the overseer. You're not supposed to leave your post without permission. Leaving the threads unattended for even a minute could cause a major tangle, costing the factory time and money. You spot her down the aisle, berating another child for slowness. You can't get her attention. The need is becoming urgent. You ask the girl working at the next station, shouting over the noise, "Where do you go?" She doesn't look at you, her eyes fixed on her own work. She just jerks her head towards a dark corner at the far end of the massive room. You make a decision. You can't wait. You abandon your machine and scurry down the long aisle, trying to be as inconspicuous as possible, hoping the overseer doesn't spot you. As you get closer to the corner, a new smell cuts through the familiar scents of oil and cotton. It's a foul, sharp stench of ammonia and human waste that grows stronger with every step. And then you see it, tucked away in the corner, in full view of anyone who happens to be at that end of the room, is the sanitary facility. It's not a room, not a cubicle, not even a curtained-off area. It is, quite simply, a large wooden barrel, a single, open-topped cask, about waist-high. This is the toilet for everyone, men, women, and children on this entire, vast factory floor. It's known as a privy cask. There might be 2 or 3 scattered around a very large factory, but often just one per floor. It is used by dozens, if not hundreds, of workers throughout the long day. There is no lid. There is no privacy. To use it, you just have to turn your back to the room and hope for the best. The floor around the barrel is dark and wet with spills and overflow. The stench is dizzying. You hesitate, a wave of disgust and shame washing over you. But the physical need is too great. You join a short, miserable-looking queue of 2 other people waiting their turn. This is another part of the factory's brutal calculus: time is money. A worker spending time walking to a proper, distant toilet is a worker not producing. The solution: put a bucket in the corner. It's maximally time efficient. This complete lack of sanitation is one of the most disgusting, undangerous aspects of factory life. These barrels were emptied infrequently, perhaps once a day, or even less often. They were a breeding ground for flies and germs, spreading disease throughout the workforce. In an environment already rife with respiratory problems from the dust, the addition of rampant gastrointestinal diseases from facilities like this was devastating. A strange and rather horrifying detail that comes from historical records concerns the scavengers again. In some mills, one of the most unpleasant and degrading punishments for a child worker was to be assigned the task of emptying this barrel at the end of the day. Historians are still untangling the attitudes of the time towards this. Was it purely economic cruelty, or did it reflect a genuinely different standard of modesty and hygiene? The concept of bodily privacy as we know it today was largely a luxury of the upper and middle classes. For the poor, who lived crammed together in single rooms, a certain level of public bodily function was simply a fact of life. The factory floor, in a way, just extended the lack of privacy from the home into the workplace. However, that doesn't mean it wasn't humiliating. Personal accounts and testimony from the period are full of mentions of the shame and disgust associated with these open facilities. It was a constant, daily degradation. It's your turn. You use the barrel as quickly as you can, your face hot with embarrassment, trying not to breathe too deeply. There is no toilet paper. Of course, that's an unimaginable luxury. Some workers might use a scrap of old cloth or a handful of waste cotton, but most just make do. There is certainly no place to wash your hands. You scurry away from the corner, back towards the relative fresh air of the main floor. The foul smell seems to cling to you. You get back to your station, your heart pounding. The threads on your section of the machine are in a terrible mess. Several have snapped and are now angled around the spindles. You've created a problem. The overseer is there waiting for you. Her face is a thundercloud. She doesn't need to shout, her expression says it all. You brace yourself for a blow, but instead, she points to the mess. You are to be fined. A portion of your already minuscule wages for the day will be docked to pay for the time and material you wasted. It's a perfect system for the owners. The worker is responsible for all errors, all inefficiencies, even those caused by the most basic of human needs. You set to work, your fingers fumbling as you try to untangle the mess you made. The shame of the corner, combined with the injustice of the fine, stings more than any physical slap. You've learned another lesson of the factory. Your body and its needs are a liability. They are an inconvenience to the smooth operation of the machine, and you will be punished for them. Your fingers tremble slightly as you work to fix the tangled threads, your mind replaying the overseer's cold glare. The fine is more than just a loss of a few pennies, it's a mark of failure. You feel a prickling awareness of being watched, not just by the overseer, but by everyone. In the relentless noise, you can't hear their judgment, but you can feel it. You become hyper-aware of the figures moving in the periphery of your vision. Most are just other workers, heads down, lost in their own mechanical worlds. But one figure stands out. He doesn't operate a machine. He just walks. This is the overseer, or gather, a man whose only job is to patrol the floor, ensuring that the human parts of the factory are working at maximum capacity. HES at all, thin man in a waistcoat, and he carries the unofficial to love his trade is short, thick leather strap, sometimes called a taozi, or in some mills, simply a stick. He doesn't walk with the hurried pace of the workers. He strolls, a predator moving through his territory, his eyes scanning everything. He rarely speaks. The strap, held loosely in his hand, does the talking for him. You learn to recognize the sound of his heavy boots on the wooden floor, a distinct, solid tread that can, for a brief moment, cut through the general din of the machinery. When you hear that sound approaching, your focus narrows, your hands move a little faster, and you try to make yourself invisible. The use of corporal punishment in factories was rampant, especially for child workers. You were not seen as an employee who could be reasoned with or motivated by incentives. You were seen as a stubborn animal that needed to be broken. A child falling asleep, a common occurrence in the long, exhausting shifts, would be woken not with a gentle shake, but with a sharp rap from the strap or a bucket of cold water. A moment of chatter with another child, a clumsy mistake, a slow down in pace, all were punishable offenses. You see it happen to a boy a few machines down. HES a PCR. Like you, he must have been daydreaming for a split second, his attention wavering. The overseer seems to materialize out of nowhere behind him. There's no warning. The leather strap whistles through the air and lands squarely across the boy's shoulders. The boy flinches, lets out a small cry that is instantly swallowed by the noise, and immediately hunches back over his work, his hands moving with renewed, terrified speed. The overseer doesn't pause. He just continues his slow, deliberate patrol. The message is clear and brutally effective. The threat is constant. It keeps you alert when your body is screaming for rest. It keeps you focused when the monotonous work and the roaring noise are trying to lull your mind into a stupor. Historians have long debated the precise nature of this factory discipline. Was it the sadistic whim of individual overseers? Or was it a systemic policy dictated from the top down by the mill owners? The evidence suggests it was both. Mill owners certainly encouraged a disciplined, productive workforce, and they employed men who could deliver it. Fines, threats, and physical punishment were simply the accepted tools of management. Some overseers were undoubtedly more brutal than others, but the system itself relied on a foundation of fear. There's a curious and sad little detail that emerges from the records about this. Some parents would tacitly, or even explicitly, give overseers permission to discipline their children. From their desperate perspective, the beating at work was preferable to the child being sacked, which would mean a loss of income for the whole family. It's another one of those impossible choices that the system forced upon people. Please make sure my child works hard. Do what you have to do, was the tragic, unspoken agreement. You also learned to watch the man's shadow. The gas lights hanging from the high ceiling are few and far between, casting long, dancing shadows across the floor. Sometimes, you see the overseer's elongated shadow stretching towards you before you see the man himself. The shadow becomes a warning, a silent herald of his approach. Your life in the factory is a game of avoiding shadows. But the stick isn't the only true love discipline. Public humiliation is another. A child who repeatedly makes mistakes might be forced to wear a sign of their failure. Sometimes, weights were tied around a child's neck, forcing them to walk up and down the aisles as an example to others. This psychological cruelty was often just as effective as physical pain. You keep your head down, focusing on the threads. Tie, tie, tie. Your world shrinks to the single, repetitive task. The fear sharpens your senses. You are no longer just tired and sore. You are vigilant. Every nerve is on edge. The overseer's silent, pacing presence is a constant, low-grade terror that overlays the noise and the dust. It's the ghost in the machine, the human element that ensures the other human elements don't falter. The day feels like it will never end. The brief moment of shame in the corner and the injustice of fine have been replaced by this more primal fear. You are not just working to earn a wage. You are working to avoid the strap. You are working to be invisible to the man with the stick. And in this roaring, thundering forest of iron, invisibility is the most valuable skill you can learn. And then, it happens. They grit. Shuddering bell rings throughout the factory. A sound so loud and final, it seems to shake the very foundations of the building. This is the one you've been waiting for, the signal of release. For a moment, nothing changes. The machines continue their relentless pounding. But then, one by one, with a series of groans, clicks, and long, drawn-out sighs of steam, the great engines that power the looms and mules begin to slow. The thunderous roar that has been the soundtrack to your entire day falters, replaced by a chaotic clatter as the machines run down. And then, an almost shocking quiet settles over the room. It's not silence. Not really. There's still the hiss of cooling metal, the drip of water, the low murmur of hundreds of people. But compared to the roar of moments before, it feels like the quietest place on earth. The absence of noise is so profound it's like a physical pressure has been lifted from your body. You can feel your own heartbeat in your ears. You stand motionless for a second, letting the quiet wash over you. The day is done. You survived. Now, it's time to go home. You take a step, and a jolt of surprise and pain shoots through you. Your legs don't feel like your own. After 12 hours of standing, walking, and stooping on the hard wooden floor, they have become stiff, alien things. They feel numb and heavy, as if filled with packed cotton. This sensation, sometimes called cotton legs by the workers, is a shared agony. The first few steps are a hobble. 1,000 tiny needles seem to prickle your feet and calves as the blood struggles to circulate properly again. You, and everyone around you are moving with the same stiff, pained gait. The factory floor is suddenly filled with a silent army of the walking wounded, each person nursing their own private aches. You join the great, slow-moving river of people heading for the gates. No one is running. No one is laughing. The energy for that was burned away hours ago. The faces you pass are pale and smudged with grime, their eyes glassy with fatigue. In the dim light, you all look like ghosts of yourselves, gray figures drifting out of the brick tomb. As you step out of the factory gates and into the evening air, the cold hits you. The city is dark now, lit only by the faint, flickering glow of gas lamps spaced far apart on the main streets. The air is still thick with coal smoke, which seems to hang heavier in the damp night. You pull your thin jacket tighter around you. You are not just taking home your exhaustion. You are wearing the factory. Your clothes are stiff with grime and sweat. Your skin is coated in a fine, greasy layer of oil and dust, and you are carrying its smell. It's a unique perfume, a combination of hot metal, mineral oil, raw cotton, and the faint, sour scent of hundreds of unwashed bodies working in close proximity. This smell clings to you. It's in your hair, in the fibers of your clothes, worked deep into the pores of your skin. It's a scent that marks you as a factory worker just as surely as a brand would. This is a small, often unmentioned detail of industrial life. You didn't just work in the factory. You took the factory home with you every single night, in scent and substance. The walk home is a dreamlike trance. Your mind is a blessed blank. The hypervigilance of the day, the fear of the overseer's stick, has evaporated, leaving behind a hollowed-out numbness. You follow the familiar path through the dark, muddy streets, your cotton legs moving on autopilot. Historians and sociologists still debate what was going on in the minds of workers during this daily transition. Were they completely dehumanized by the labor, reduced to automatons simply carrying out the final command of the day go home, or was this quiet, trudging walk the first moment where their own thoughts, their own humanity, began to bubble back to the surface? Was there a flicker of relief, thoughts of the meager dinner to come, or just a profound, empty weariness? The truth is likely as varied as the people themselves. But for you, tonight, it's the latter. Your mind is too tired to think. You are just a body, moving towards rest. You say you're straight, you're building. It's no different from the others, but it's yours. You see a faint light in the small window, a pale or inch glow that promises a fire, however small. The sight gives you the last little push of energy you need. You reach the door and push it open. The wave of warm, familiar air, the smell of your family, of damp walls and boiling potatoes washes over you. Your mother looks up from the stove. She doesn't smile. Smiles are a currency in short supply, but her eyes soften for a fraction of a second. You've made it. You have dragged your aching, filthy body through the dark city and back to this one small room. The work part of your day is over, but the day itself isn't finished yet. There is still the evening to endure, and the dirt of the factory to deal with, before you can finally collapse into sleep. You slump onto one of the wobbly stools by the fire. too tired to even take off your jacket. The warmth from the small stove feels incredible on your child's skin. Your father is already home, sitting on the edge of the bed, his shoulders slumped in a posture of pure exhaustion. He works at the docks, and his body is just as beaten as yours, though by a different kind of labor. Your mother is busy at the stove. On the fire is a pot of boiling water, and next to it, the centerpiece of the evening, a large wooden tub. It's not a bathtub as we would imagine it. It's just a large, shallow, all-purpose basin, the kind used for washing clothes, for mixing dough, for anything and everything. Tonight, it is for washing you. This is the weekly ritual, not daily. The idea of a daily bath is a fantasy beyond imagining. Water is too precious, and fuel to heat, it is too expensive. So once a week, usually on a Saturday night to be clean for Sunday, the family performs its ablutions, and it is a performance of strict, water-saving economy. Your mother adds a dipper of cold water from the buckets you fetched this morning to the boiling water in the tub, testing the temperature with her hand until it's a lukewarm, barely comfortable heat. This single tub of water will be used by the entire family. There will be no refiling. You are first, as the child, and the dirtiest from the factory floor. You get the cleanest water. You strip off your grimy clothes, standing naked and shivering for a moment on the cold, damp earth floor. Your skin is gray with a day's worth of accumulated filth. You step into the tub. The water only comes up to your ankles. You sit down, bringing the level up to your waist. Your mother hands you a small, rough piece of cloth and a lump of soap. The soap isn't fragrant or gentle. It's a harsh, brown, greasy bar, made from tallow, animal fat, and lye. It doesn't lather well in the hard, mineral-rich city water, but it's all you have. You begin to scrub. The water around you immediately turns a muddy brown as the layers of soot, oil, and cotton dust dissolve off your skin. It's satisfying and disgusting at the same time. You scrub your arms, your legs, your face, trying to get the grime out from under your fingernails. An almost impossible task. After you've scrubbed yourself raw, you stand up, and your mother uses a small pitcher to rinse you with a little of the cleaner water from the top of the tub. Then you step out, and she hands you a thin, worn towel. Next, it's your father's turn. He doesn't get fresh water. He gets into your dirty, gray water. He washes himself in the same way, the water becoming even murkier. Finally, after he is done, it is your mother's turn. She will use the same cold, scummy, twice-used water to wash herself. This hierarchy of bathing child first, then father, then mother was a common practice, a small, domestic ritual rooted in pragmatism. This is a detail of hygiene that often gets lost in the big picture of industrial squalor. The challenge wasn't just a lack of facilities, but the sheer effort and expense involved in the act of getting clean. It required fetching water, spending money on fuel, and dedicating time that tired workers barely had. A bath like this was a significant household chore. Historians debate the cultural meaning of cleanliness in this period. Was being clean a moral virtue, as it was becoming for the rising middle class, who used their porcelain tubs and scented soaps as a way to distinguish themselves from the great and washed? Or was it purely a practical matter? For the working class, the evidence suggests it was a complex mix. While they may not have had the germ theory to motivate them, people certainly preferred being clean to being dirty. A clean shirt for Sunday, a scrubbed face, these were small acts of dignity, ways of asserting one's humanity in a world that seemed determined to grind it away. A quirky and rather unpleasant bit of information from this time is about what people did when they couldn't afford soap or the fuel to heat water. A common substitute for soap was stale urine, which contains ammonia, a powerful cleaning agent. Families would keep a piss pot to collect it for washing clothes or scouring floors. While this was more common for laundry, the line between cleaning your clothes and cleaning your body was often blurry. After your bath, You feel raw but human again. The gray film is gone, though your skin still feels grimy in the creases. You put on your night clothes, which is just an old, oversized shirt, and huddle by the fire. Dinner is ready. It's the same as it will be most nights: boiled potatoes and maybe a little bit of gruel, washed down with weak, sweet tea. As you eat your meager meal, you watch your mother. Her last task for the night is to deal with the tub of filthy water. She can't just leave it. She and your father will have to haul the heavy tub to the front door and tip the contents out into the open gutter that runs down the middle of the street. Your family's filth will join the filth of all your neighbors, a dark, sluggish stream making its way towards the river. The day is finally, truly over. You are as clean as you are going to get. You are fed. The fire is dying down. All that's left is the deep, dreamless sleep of the utterly exhausted. The brief bliss of Sunday, a day of relative cleanliness and no factory bells, fades all too quickly. By Monday afternoon, the familiar layer of grime has already begun to re-establish itself on your skin. But there's another sensation, one that doesn't wash away on a Saturday night. It's an itch, a persistent, nagging itch on your scalp. At first, you noticed it and scratched, assuming it was just more cotton dust. But it's always there, a low-level irritation that flares up when you're hot or trying to sleep. You scratch your head now without even thinking about it. It has become a reflex, a part of your physical landscape, like the ache in your legs or the ringing in your ears. One evening, as you sit by the dim light of the stove, your mother notices you scratching furiously. She sighs, a sound of weary resignation. "Come here," she says, her voice gentle. You go to her, and she has you sit on the floor between her knees. This is a familiar, almost comforting position. With practiced fingers, she begins to part your hair, strand by strand, her eyes scanning your scalp in the flickering firelight. Her touch is soft, but her search is methodical. "Ah," she murmurs. It's not a word of surprise. It's a word of confirmation. She has found what she was looking for. She shows you what she has picked from your hair, holding it on her fingertip. It's a tiny, grayish-white speck, day louse, and the darker specks clinging to the base of your hair shafts. Those are its eggs, the nits. Your scalp is not just itchy, it is inhabited. You have become a home for a colony of tiny, secret guests. This was an almost inescapable reality of life in the crowded tenements and factories. Head lice thrive in conditions where people are in close, constant contact, with families sleeping in a single bed, and children working shoulder to shoulder in the mills. They spread with relentless efficiency. Having lice wasn't an isolated incident, it was a chronic condition, a low-grade affliction of poverty. Your mother produces the family's primary weapon in this endless war, a fine-toothed comb. It's a precious object, perhaps carved from bone or dark wood. These combs were essential household tools, often double-sided, with one set of teeth for regular combing and a much finer, denser set specifically for knit combing. The act of methodically combing lice and nits from the hair was a regular, time-consuming ritual in most poor households. She begins to drag the comb through your hair, section by section. It pulls and scrapes against your scalp, an unpleasant, scratching sensation, but with each pass, she wipes the comb on a rag, leaving behind a grim collection of tiny bodies and eggs. There are no special shampoos, no chemical treatments available to you. This mechanical removal, combined with folk remedies of varying unquestionable effectiveness, like rinsing the hair with vinegar to loosen the knit's grip, or in extreme cases, applying something dangerous like kerosene, was the only defense. Historians looking at public health often point to parasites as a key indicator of a population's living standards. The prevalence of lice, fleas, and bed bugs tells a story of overcrowding and a lack of washing facilities. But the academic debate often shifts to the social and psychological impact. When did having lice transition from being a common, shared nuisance to a deep source of shame and a marker of being unclean. As the middle classes became more obsessed with hygiene, they began to associate such infestations with moral and social failings, not just circumstance. For you, sitting on the floor, it's hard to know if you feel more shame or just weary annoyance. It's another degradation, another thing to be endured. You ask your mother, will they go away? She sighs again, continuing her work. For a little while, maybe, but they always come back. She's right. You can be completely deloused on a Tuesday, but by Wednesday afternoon, after leaning close to the boy at the next machine, or from the shared blankets at night, a new pioneer louse will have made the journey back to your scalp, and the cycle will begin again. It is a battle you can never truly win, only fight to a temporary stalemate. You eventually learn to recognize the signs in others. You see the other children at the factory doing the same unconscious, persistent scratching. You might see a louse crawling on the collar of the person in front of you. It's a shared, unspoken secret. To mention it would be a breach of an unwritten code. Everyone has them, and everyone pretends they don't. Your mother finishes her work. Your scalp is sore and tender from the combing. The itching has subsided for now. She gives your head a small, gentle pat. It's a gesture of love and futility all at once. Later that night, as you lie in the dark, trying to fall asleep, you feel it. A faint, familiar tickle. A tiny movement in your hair. Your secret guests are still with you. You press your head into the lumpy straw pillow and try to ignore it. The itch is just another part of the noise, another part of the dirt, another part of being here. It is the quietest, most intimate reminder of your poverty, a secret you carry with you, day and night. Sunday arrives like a gasp of air after being held underwater for too long. The absence of the morning bell is the first, most beautiful gift. You wake up not to its violent clang, but to the faint, muffled sounds of the city waking up at a human pace. For one day, your time is your own. The morning is spent in a state of luxurious slowness. There is no factory to rush to. The weekly wash is done, so you are wearing your clean clothes, which are just your regular clothes, only less grimy. They still smell of damp wool and coal smoke, but they feel different against your skin. You and your father might be sent on an errand, perhaps to a street market to buy a few potatoes or a precious bit of bacon rind for flavor, spending the few pennies you earned this week. But the real highlight of the day is the freedom to simply exist outside the confines of the factory or your tiny room. After the small morning meal, you are allowed to go out into the streets. Sunday is the day the city breathes. The factories are silent, the black smoke from their chimneys reduced to a thin, lazy wisp. The sun, if it chooses to appear from behind the clouds and smog, has a slightly better chance of being seen. You and a few other children from your building wander out to explore your domain. But your playground is not a field of green grass. It's the labyrinth of cobbled alleys, the grimy courtyards between tenement blocks, the banks of the foul-smelling canal. You don't have toys. Your games are improvised from the debris of the city. A loose stone can be used for a version of hopscotch scratched into the dirt. An old, discarded barrel hoop, propelled with a stick, becomes a thrilling race. You find yourselves drawn to the places that are forbidden and dangerous during the week. The railway lines are a source of endless fascination. You might dare each other to lay a nail on the track, waiting for the next freight train to rumble past and flatten it into a tiny, treasured sword. The silent factory yard, with its gate tantalizingly shut, becomes a fortress to be spied on. This is a key point that social historians emphasize when studying this period. Children did not stop being children. Despite the brutal working hours and harsh conditions, the instinct to play, to explore, to find joy in small things was irrepressible. The nature of their play was simply shaped by their bleak environment. Their games were often reflections of the adult world they saw. They might play factory, with one child being the stern overseer and the others pretending to work at imaginary looms. However, the luxury of this one day of rest was, for a long time, not guaranteed. For decades, many factory owners, particularly in the early stages of the revolution, resisted the idea of a universal day off. They argued it was inefficient. Some mills ran 7 days a week. The movement to secure Sunday as a mandatory day of rest was a long and hard-fought battle, pushed not just by workers, but also by religious and social reform groups who were appalled by the relentless, dehumanizing schedule. So your single day off is, in itself, the victory are likely unaware of. But even this day of freedom is tinged with the dirt and danger of your surroundings. The streets are still filthy, the gutters still run with sewage. A fall while playing could result in a nasty cut from a piece of broken glass or sharp metal, a cut that could easily become infected in this unhygienic world. The canal, where you might float scraps of wood as imaginary ships, is a stinking, polluted waterway. One of the curious, and rather sad, luxuries you might encounter on a Sunday is a street vendor selling something sweet. It might be a small bag of sticky, boiled sweets, or a penny lick, a small, thick glass cup containing a tiny scoop of ice cream. This was a hugely popular treat, but it came with a hidden danger. The vendor would have 1 or 2 glasses that they would use for all their customers. After you finished your portion, you'd hand the glass back. The vendor would give it a quick, cursory wipe with a dirty rag, and then serve the next customer in the same glass. The penny lick was later identified as a major transmitter of diseases like tuberculosis. For you, though, it's a moment of pure, unadulterated bliss. A rare taste of sweetness in a harsh world. The long-term risk is invisible. The immediate reward is everything. The afternoon might see a change in the atmosphere. The men, having received their weekly wages on Saturday, often spent a good portion of Sunday in the pub. As the day wears on, the sound of drunk and singing gets louder, and sometimes fights spill out into the street. You learn to give these places a wide berth. As evening approaches, a familiar sense of melancholy begins to creep in. The brief holiday is coming to an end. The freedom of the day begins to feel less like a reality and more like a temporary dream. You know that the factory bell is waiting for you in the morning. The luxury is over. You are called back to your small room as darkness falls. The Sunday meal is oft unslightly better than the rest of the week's fare. Perhaps with that bacon rind boiled with the potatoes to give them a smoky, salty flavor. It's a small feast, but as you eat, the silence of the city feels different. It no longer feels peaceful. It feels like the quiet before the storm. The factory is sleeping, but you know it will wake up tomorrow, and you will have to go back. Sunday is not a true escape, it's just a pause button on a machine that will always be turned on again. You live in a world of powerful, overwhelming smells. The factory has its own unique bouquet of hot oil and cotton dust. Your one-room home has its smell of dampness and boiled potatoes. But the city itself, your larger home, has a signature scent that permeates everything. It's the first thing that hits you when you step outside in the morning, and the last thing you smell before the stale air of your room encloses you at night. It is the city's perfume. And it's not a pleasant one. As you walk the streets, even on a fresh Sunday, you learn to breathe through your mouth. The primary note in this urban fragrance is, of course, the coal smoke. It's a permanent part of the atmosphere, a gritty, acrid taste at the back of your throat. It comes from thousands of domestic chimneys and the ever-belching stacks of the factories. It's so pervasive that it stains the buildings black and makes your laundry, hung out to dry in a small courtyard, dirtier than it was before you washed it. But the smoke is just the top note. Underneath, it is something richer, deeper, and far more unpleasant. It's the smell of waste, all of it. The open gutters that run along the sides of the narrow streets are the city's arteries, and they are clogged with the refuse of thousands of people. Into these gutters, goes everything: the contents of chamber pots dipped from upper story windows, the dirty wash water from every family's weekly bath, animal entrails and blood from butcher shops, and all manner of rotting food scraps. This slurry flows sluggishly through the streets, creating stagnant, stinking pools in any low-lying area. On a hot day, the stench is overpowering. On a wet day, the rain just serves to stir it all up and splash it onto your legs as carts rattle past. You learn to walk in the middle of the street, not because it's safer, but because it's slightly less vile than the edges. This leads to a fascinating, if disgusting, profession that you might see people practicing. These were the two GRS or mudlarks. They were people, often children or the very old, who would wade through the foul sludge of the riverbanks at low tide, or even venture into the primitive sewer systems, searching for anything of value that might have been washed away: scraps of metal, lost coins, bits of rope. It was a dangerous, foul-smelling, and often deadly job, but it was a way to survive. Then there is the smell of industry itself. You walk past a tannery, and the chemical stench of curing leather and animal hides makes you gag. You pass a gasworks, and the foul, sulfurous smell of coal gas production hangs heavy in the air. Each factory contributes its own unique poison to the atmosphere. And, of course, there is the smell of the people themselves. In a world without effective deodorants, regular bathing, or clean clothes, a crowd has a powerful, animal scent. It's the smell of sweat, of unwashed bodies, of damp wool, all mingled together. You are a part of this smell. You contribute to it. After a while, you cease to even notice it. In the same way you eventually tune out the constant noise of the factory. It's just the smell of humanity. This whole sensory environment was underpinned by a now defunct scientific theory, the miasma theory. For most of the 19th century, the prevailing belief, even among scientists and doctors, was that diseases like cholera, chlamydia, or the Black Death were caused by miasma, or bad air. They believed that the foul smells emanating from rotting organic matter were not just unpleasant, but were the literal cause of disease. The word malaria itself comes from the Italian malaria, meaning bad air, from its association with the foul-smelling swamps where it was prevalent. Historians are fascinated by the miasma theory because it was both wrong in its mechanism but often right in its conclusions. In trying to combat the bad smells, reformers ended up cleaning the streets, building better sewer systems, and improving ventilation. They were fighting the smell, but in doing so, they were accidentally fighting the invisible bacteria and viruses that were the true culprits. Their efforts to deodorize the city by paving streets, covering sewers, and moving noxious industries out of residential areas were some of the most important public health interventions of the century. They were cleaning up for the wrong reasons, but it still worked. So as you walk through your foul-smelling city, you are living inside a giant, failed scientific theory. You, your family, and your neighbors might hold a damp rag over your nose when passing a particularly stinking alley, believing you are warding off a fever. It's a logical response to the world as you understand it. Eventually, though, a strange thing happens. Your senses begin to dull. The constant assault of noise, grime, and stench leads to a kind of sensory fatigue. You stop noticing the specific smells. The coal smoke, the sewage, the body odor all merge into a single, familiar background scent. It becomes the normal smell of the world. The only time you might notice it is if you encounter something truly unusual, like the clean, sharp scent of pine from a woodworker's shop, or the shocking, exotic smell of an orange being peeled at a street market. These rare, clean smells are the ones that seem strange and alien. The foul, complex perfume of the city has simply become the smell of home. The walls of your single-room home are thin. They are not barriers to sound, they are more like membranes, transmitting the life of the building directly into your own space. You know the family upstairs has a new baby because you hear its cries at all hours. You know the man next door has had too much to drink when you hear him singing late at night. And you know when your neighbors are sick. There's one sound that has become a constant, familiar part of the nightly soundscape: a cough. It comes from the room on the other side of the wall. It's not a simple, clearing your throat kind of cough. It's a deep, wet, rattling cough that seems to wreck the person's entire body. It goes on and on, sometimes for minutes at a time, a desperate, painful sounding battle for breath. Sometimes it's followed by a period of quiet, and you find yourself holding your own breath, listening, until the next ragged gasp and another round of coughing begins. You don't know the neighbor's name. You just know him as the cough. Sickness is not an event in your world, it's a condition. It is a constant, ambient presence, like the smoke in the air or the mud on the street. Everyone is a little bit sick, all the time. The children all have perpetual runny noses. The factory sniffles. The adults all have aching backs and bad joints. And almost everyone has a cough of some sort. The White Death, tuberculosis, and the miner's friends, salixisis, were common names for the respiratory diseases that ravaged the industrial workforce. The disease you are listening to through the wall is likely tuberculosis, or consumption, as it was often called. It was the Great Plague of the 19th century. Thriving in the exact conditions you live in: overcrowded, poorly ventilated housing, and bodies weakened by malnutrition and overwork. The cotton dust you breathe in all day at the factory doesn't help. It irritates the lungs, making them more susceptible to the tubercle bacillus. Your workplace is actively preparing your body to be a good host for the disease. When someone in the building gets seriously ill, there is no doctor that comes to call. Doctors are for the rich. For you, there are folk remedies, passed down knowledge from your grandmother, or perhaps a visit to the local apothecary or chemist, who might sell you a dubious, brightly colored patent medicine. These patent medicines were one of the first industries to perfect mass advertising. Their ads were everywhere, promising miracle cures for everything from coughs and consumption to female complaints and nervous disorders. A strange and dark secret of these popular remedies was their ingredients. Many of the most popular soothing syrups for coughs and fussy children contain shocking amounts of alcohol, opium, or even morphine. Dad Freeze Cordial, a bestseller, was a potent cocktail of opiates and treacle. These remedies worked not by curing the underlying disease, but by sedating the patient into a stupor. You weren't getting better, you were just a drug to notice you were sick. The neighbor with the cough might very well be spending his last few pennies on a bottle of syrup that is doing nothing but quieting his symptoms while the disease consumes him from the inside out. The historical debate here often centers on the perception of death and disease. In a world where life expectancy was brutally short and child mortality was staggeringly high, was the attitude towards sickness and death different? Some historians argue that death was so common it was met with a kind of fatalistic resignation. It was a sad, the normal, part of life. Others argue that this view is too simplistic, that personal grief and the fear of death were just as profound, but were perhaps expressed differently, with less public fanfare and more quiet, stoic endurance. One day, you notice something new in the soundscape. The coughing from next door has stopped. The silence is more alarming than the noise it replaced. A few days later, you see a plain wooden cart outside the building. Two men carry out a long, narrow bundle wrapped in a simple cloth sheet. There is no coffin. Those are an expense for families with more to spare. They place the bundle in the cart and drive away. That evening, the room next door is silent. A few days later, a new family moves in. You hear the sounds of their arrival, the scrape of furniture, the unfamiliar voices. The life of the building moves on, closing over the empty space with barely a ripple. You lie in bed and listen to the new sounds from next door. A baby crying, a woman singing a lullaby. You wonder if, one day, the people on the other side of the wall will be listening to your cough. It's not a morbid thought. It's a practical one. In this world, You don't think about if you will get sick. You just wonder when. Illness is not a random intruder. It's a neighbor you haven't been formally introduced to yet. On Saturday nights, the city changes its tune. The weary shuffle of the weekday crowds is replaced by a different kind of energy. A frantic, almost desperate quest for release. You see it as you walk home from the factory. The streets brighter and louder than on any other night except Sunday. This is the night the workers get paid. And for many of the men, the first stop is not home, at the pub. Every other corner seems to have a public house or a gin palace. They are impossible to miss. They are often the brightest, most lavishly decorated buildings on the street. While your home is dark and cramped, the gin palace is a fantasy world of bright gas lights, polished wood, and ornate mirrors. The mirrors are a particularly clever touch. They create the illusion of space and grandeur, making the small, crowded room feel like a magnificent hall. It's an escape, a brief, dazzling respite from the grim reality of the brick and soot world outside. You walk past the swinging doors of one of these places and catch a glimpse inside. It's packed with men, all talking loudly, laughing, singing. The air that billows out is thick with the smell of stale beer, tobacco smoke, and sweat. It's a world of men. Your father might go, but only for a short while. He knows his wages are needed at home, but for many, this is where a significant portion of the family's income is spent before it ever reaches the wife and children waiting in their single, cold room. The drink of choice for the very poor, the liquid that fueled this desperate escape, was gin, not the refined, botanical gin we might think of today, but a harsh, cheap, and potent spirit. It was known by many names. Mother's Ruin, Blue Ruin, Striking Water. It was cheap, it was strong, and it worked fast. It was the quickest, most affordable way to blur the sharp edges of a brutal life. A few pennies could buy enough gin to induce a state of blissful, forgetful intoxication. This period in the 18th and early 19th centuries is often referred to by historians as the gin craze. The social consequences were devastating. Public drunkenness was rampant. Addiction destroyed families. The artist William Hogarth famously captured this in his engravings Beer, Street and Gin Lane, contrasting the happy, industrious beer drinkers with the skeletal, destitute, and chaotic lives of the gin addicts. While Hogarth's work was from a slightly earlier period, the legacy of cheap gin as the ultimate escape for the urban poor was still very much alive in your time. You see a woman stumble out of the gin palace, her face flushed, her eyes unfocused. She's not the only one. While the pubs were largely a male domain, the gin palaces were more welcoming to women, a fact that horrified many social reformers of the time. For a woman whose life was an endless cycle of childcare, domestic drudgery, and poverty, gin offered the same seductive promise of escape it offered the men. Historians have a complex and often heated debate about the role of alcohol in working-class life during the Industrial Revolution. Was the heavy drinking a symptom of the misery, a rational, if self-destructive response to unbearable living and working conditions, or was it a cause of the misery, a moral failing that kept families trapped in a cycle of poverty? The temperance movement, a powerful social and religious force in the 19th century, certainly argued for the latter. They saw alcohol as the root of all social evil and fought fiercely for prohibition. However, many modern historians take a more nuanced view, arguing that blaming the victims for their coping mechanisms ignores the systemic brutality of the world they were forced to endure. The gin palace wasn't just a place to get drunk, it was a warm, bright, social space in a world that offered very little warmth or light. A strange and little-known fact about these establishments is the existence of the penny drunk. For a penny, a person could get enough gin to pass out. Some gin palaces allegedly had ropes strung across the back rooms. A customer could pay to lean against the rope to sleep off their intoxication. In the morning, the bartender would simply untie the rope, and all the sleeping drunks would slide onto the floor, ready to be swept out into the street. It's a grim, almost comical image of just how cheap and accessible oblivion was. You hurry past the doors, averting your eyes. You know that later tonight, the noise from the pub will get louder, the singing will turn to shouting, and sometimes fights will spill out onto the street. You know that some children in your building will not have enough to eat this week because their father's wages were spent on this forgetful water. You see your own father walking home, his face set and tired. He carries his wage packet tightly in his hand. He has bypassed the lure of the bright lights. He is bringing his earnings home. You feel a quiet sense of relief. The Jinn Palace, with its dazzling lights and false promises, represents a powerful force in your world. It's a symptom of the despair that hangs over the city like the smog. It's the adult version of your own coping mechanisms, the blank trance on the walk home, the focus on the next meal. It's a different kind of medicine from the cough syrups that line the apothecary's shelves. But it serves the same purpose, not to cure the disease of poverty, but to temporarily numb its pain. The smell of your evening meal is the most consistent and predictable part of your day. It's a scent that requires no guesswork. As you walk down your street, you can smell it coming from every doorway, a testament to the shared culinary reality of the neighborhood. It is the smell of boiling potatoes. You get home and there they are, steaming in a bowl on the rough wooden table. This is the centerpiece of your diet, not just tonight, but most nights. Potatoes are the fuel that runs the human machinery of the industrial city. They are cheap, easy to cook, and caloric, dense. A family can survive on them, and for many, that is the sole goal of their diet survival. Your mother places the bowl on the table. There might be a tiny lump of lard or butter melting on top if it's been a good week. You might dip them in a little pile of salt if you can afford it, but mostly, it's just the potato, in its plain, boiled glory. Alongside the potatoes, the other pillar of your diet is oatmeal, or gruel. It's your breakfast, the warm, watery, filling paste that silences the morning hunger pangs. It's cheap and expands in the stomach, creating a long-lasting, if not particularly pleasant, feeling of fullness. And then there's bread, the dark, dense, often adulterated bread you take for your lunch at the factory. These three things, potatoes, oats, and bread, form the holy trinity of your food world. They are the bulk of your caloric intake. Meat is a rare, almost mythical substance. You might have it once a week, on a Sunday, and it will be a cheap, tough cut of mutton or pork, boiled for hours to make it chewable. More likely, you'll have just a small piece of bacon or a bone, used to flavor the water for a soup or stew. The taste of meat is a special occasion. Fresh vegetables, apart from potatoes and maybe the occasional onion or cabbage, are also scarce. They are difficult to transport to the city without spoiling, making them a luxury item. Food is even rarer, something you might only taste if you manage to snag a bruised apple from a market stall. Your diet is a landscape of beige and brown. It is monotonous, bland, and severely lacking in the vitamins and nutrients we now know are essential for health. This diet had visible consequences. Scurvy, a disease caused by a lack of vitamin C, was not just a problem for sailors. It could be found in the darkest corners of the industrial slums, causing gum disease, lethargy, and skin problems. Rickets, caused by a lack of vitamin D from sunlight and poor diet, was rampant among city children, leading to softened, bowed leg bones. The factory limp wasn't always just from standing sometimes. It was from a diet that couldn't build strong bones. Historians who study food and nutrition have a long-running debate on this topic. It's known as the standard of living debate. One side argues that while the industrial diet was terrible in quality and variety, it may have been an improvement in sheer quantity for many former agricultural laborers. In the countryside, your diet was at the mercy of the seasons and the harvest. A bad year could mean months of near starvation. In the city, as long as you had a wage, you could almost always buy potatoes and bread. This school of thought argues that workers were, on average, taller and heavier than their rural counterparts, suggesting a higher caloric intake. The other side argues that this focus on calories is misleading. They contend that the catastrophic decline in food quality, freshness, and nutritional diversity led to a host of chronic health problems that didn't exist to the same degree in the countryside. They were eating more, perhaps, but they were less healthy. The debate continues to this day, with scholars using everything from military recruitment records to skeletal remains to try and settle the question of whether the average worker was better or worse off after moving to the city. A strange and little-known aspect of the urban diet was the rise of new, cheap, and often highly processed foods. You might occasionally get to taste treacle, a dark, sticky syrup that was a byproduct of sugar refining. It was a cheap source of sweetness and energy, often spread on bread as a treat. Another one was margarine, invented in the mid-19th century as a cheap substitute for butter. The food of the poor was becoming, for the first time, not just what was grown, but what could be manufactured. You finish your potatoes, wiping the bowl clean with a piece of bread to get the last salty, fatty residue. You are no longer hungry, but you are not satisfied in the way one is after a delicious, varied meal. You are simply refueled. Your body has been given enough energy to get through the night and face the factory again tomorrow. Food in your world is not about pleasure, or culture, or family gatherings around a table. It is a grim, daily calculation of survival. It is about finding the cheapest possible way to convert pennies into the energy required for 12 hours of hard labor. And in that calculation, the humble, bland, reliable potato is king. Your world is a world of second-hand things. The wobbly stools you sit on, the lumpy mattress you sleep on, even the pot your mother cooks in, they all had previous owners, previous lives you know nothing about. This is especially true of the clothes on your back. You have one set of clothes for work and one for Sunday. They are not new. They were not made for you. They were bought from a vast, thriving second-hand market. On a Sunday, you might see the street markets where old clothes are sold. They are piled high on stalls, a mountain of discarded garments from every level of society. A coat that once belonged to a wealthy gentleman, now stained and worn, might be sold to a clerk. When the clerk wears it out, it might be sold again to a laborer. The clothes trickle down the social ladder, getting more worn, more patched, more faded with each new owner. Your clothes are at the very bottom of this ladder. Your trousers have a patch on the knee, a different color and texture from the original fabric. The seam on your shirt's shoulder is a jagged, uneven line of thick, dark thread, a repair done by your mother in the dim firelight. The concept of fast fashion is alien. Clothes are not disposable. They are a valuable resource, to be worn until they literally fall apart. Mending is a constant, necessary chore. Your mother is often busy in the evenings with a needle and thread, her face etched with concentration as she performed surgery on a ripped seam or a worn-out elbow. Her stitches are not neat or decorative, they are functional, designed to hold the fragile fabric together for another week, another month. This creates a peculiar aesthetic. Everyone is a walking collage of patches and repairs. A single garment might be a patchwork of 2 or 3 different fabrics, a testament to its long and difficult life. This visible poverty was something the upper classes found both pitiable and distasteful. For them, new, well-fitting clothes were a sign of status. For you, your ill-fitting, patched-up clothes are simply a fact of life. The material of your clothes is mostly wool and coarse, heavy cotton or linen blend called fustian. Wool is warm and durable, but it's heavy when wet and takes forever to dry in your damp, single room. It also has a distinct, sheepy smell that gets stronger with every wash. Fustian is tough and cheap, the denim of its day, but it's stiff and abrasive against the skin. Softness is a luxury you rarely experience. A fascinating and slightly grim detail of the second-hand clothing trade was the fear of foamy tests. A foamy tea is an object that can carry infection. Even before the full acceptance of germ theory, people had a sense that diseases could cling to the clothes of the sick. Buying a coat at a market stall, you had no way of knowing if its previous owner had died of tuberculosis, cholera, or smallpox. The fear was real enough that clothes from a house where someone had died from a contagious disease were often supposed to be burned. But poverty creates its own necessities, and these clothes often found their way back into the market, sold by desperate families or unscrupulous dealers. The coat that keeps you warm could, in theory, be carrying the illness that will kill you. Historians who study material culture find this era fascinating. They debate the social meaning of clothing. Was it purely functional for the working class, or did they still try to express identity and aspiration through their limited wardrobe? Evidence suggests that even within these severe constraints, people tried to maintain standards. They clean, neatly patched shirt for Sunday, a brightly colored ribbon for a girl's hair, a man's neckerchief tied in a particular way. These were small but significant attempts to assert individuality and self-respect in a world that tried to strip them of both. It was a form of respectability politics, an effort to show that despite their poverty, they were not without dignity. You don't own shoes in the modern sense. You have a single pair of heavy, ill-fitting boots with wooden soles and leather uppers. The soles are often hobnailed, lead-studded with short, iron nails to make them last longer. They are loud on the cobbles, stiff, and give you blisters, but they are sturdy, and they keep the worst of the mud and filth of the street off your feet. When a nail wears down or the leather splits, they are taken to a cobbler for repair. You don't buy new shoes until your feet have grown so much that you can no longer cram them into your old ones. Then, your old boots will be handed down to a younger sibling or sold back into the second-hand market. Your clothes are your shelter, your uniform, and a constant, itchy reminder of your place in the world. They are a map of your life, marked with the stains of the factory, the patches of mending, and the lingering scent of countless previous owners. They are not a fashion statement. They are a tool for survival, as essential and as unglamorous as the boiled potatoes on your plate or the roof over your head. There is a river in your city. It's the reason the city exists in the first place. It provides the water to run the steam engines, a transport route for raw materials and finished goods, and a convenient place to dispose of things you no longer want. Once, perhaps generations ago, it might have been a clear, rushing body of water, full of fish, with green banks. You can't imagine it. The river you know is a different creature entirely. On your precious Sunday, you might wander down to its banks. You don't go there to admire the beauty of nature. You go there because it's a place of strange and fascinating activity. The river is not blue or green. It's an opaque, viscous, brownish gray, so thick with pollution it barely seems to move. The surface is oft uncoated with a shimmering, rainbow-colored film of industrial effluent. You stand on the bank and watch what the river carries. It is the city's great sewer and trash can. You see the bloated bodies of dead animals, a cat, a dog, sometimes even a pig from a nearby slaughterhouse drifting slowly downstream. You see rotting vegetable matter, household trash, and a constant, steady stream of raw sewage from the outlets that empty directly into it. The factories that line the banks contribute their own special ingredients to this toxic soup. A textile mill upstream might release a sudden, shocking plume of brightly colored dye, indigo blue one day, a startling crimson the next, which stains the water for hours as it passes. A tannery releases chemical waste that kills everything it touches. The water is a chemical cocktail, a visible record of the city's industrial processes. The smell is overwhelming, especially on a warm day. It's the smell of decay, of chemicals, of human and animal waste all mixed together. It's the concentrated perfume of the city, delivered in one powerful, nauseating dose. Yet, people live and work right on its banks, their houses back right up to the water, their foundations oft unlapped by the fell tides. Despite its toxicity, the river is still a source of life. In a grim sort of way, you see the mudlarks, children even poorer than you, wading in the thick, foul-smelling mud at the river's edge when the tide is low. They are searching for anything valuable that might have been washed ashore, lumps of coal that have fallen from barges, scraps of rope, bits of metal. They are covered from head to toe in the black, stinking mud, their skin exposed to a horrifying brew of pathogens and poisons. It's one of the most dangerous and desperate jobs the city has to offer. A particularly curious and grim detail about these polluted rivers comes from the era's scientists. When they began to analyze the water, they were shocked by what they found. Some rivers, like the Thames in London during the Great Stink of 1858, were so de-exigmenting and full of organic matter that they were essentially fermenting. The water was generating flammable methane gas. There are anecdotal reports of people lighting the bubbles that rose to the surface, creating small flashes of fire on the water. The river was literally becoming explosive. The historical debate around this environmental catastrophe is complex. Did people at the time not realize what they were doing, or did they simply not care? The prevailing attitude for a long time was that rivers were natural, self-cleaning systems, capable of absorbing an infinite amount of waste. The sheer scale of industrial and population growth shattered this assumption. The debate among historians often focuses on when the tipping point occurred, the moment when the public and the politicians realized that the river was not just dirty, but dead, and that it had become a mortal threat to the city itself. This realization, spurred by events like the Great Stink and major cholera outbreaks definitively linked to the water supply, was the beginning of the modern environmental and public health movements. But for you, a child on the riverbank, these grand historical shifts are irrelevant. The river is just a fact of life. You might even find a strange beauty in it. The swirling patterns of oil on the water, the way a sudden discharge of dye can turn the whole world a brilliant, unnatural color for a few minutes. It's a kind of terrible spectacle. You know not to touch the water. That is a rule that is beaten into every child from a young age. You know that to fall in would be a death sentence, not necessarily from drowning, but from the cocktail of diseases you would inevitably swallow. The river is a monster, a sluggish, sleeping beast in the heart of your city. It gives the city life, but it also promises death. It is the perfect, dark, polluted heart of your industrial world, and as you watch it slide by, you are watching the physical embodiment of the progress that has shaped every moment of your young life. The factory floor is a universe of noise, a place where spoken words are shredded into meaninglessness by the thunder of the machines. You spend 12 hours a day surrounded by people, yet you are profoundly alone. Verbal communication is impossible, reduced to shouted, one-word commands from the overseer or frantic gestures. Yet, in this enforced silence, a different kind of language emerges. You work your station, your eyes scanning the threads, your hands ready to dart and untie a knot. Next to you, perhaps only a few feet away, is another child doing the exact same thing. You don't know their name. You don't know if they have brothers or sisters, or what their one-room home looks like. You have never had a conversation that you know them. Your relationship is built on a foundation of shared misery and mutual observation. It's a silent friendship, conducted through the subtle flick of an eye, the slight nod of a head, the almost imperceptible tensing of the shoulders. You learn to read the signs. If you see the shadow of the overseer with his stick falling over your neighbor's workstation, you might make a small, sharp, accidental noise, perhaps dropping a tool or kicking the base of the machine, just enough to break their reverie and snap their attention back to their work before the overseer sees them slacking. They will do the same for you. It's not planned. It's not discussed. It's an instinct, a small act of solidarity in a system designed to isolate you. If your neighbor successfully fixes a particularly nasty tangle of threads, you might catch their eye for a fraction of a second and give a tiny, almost invisible nod of acknowledgement. It says, "Well done." I saw that. That was a bad one. In a world where your only feedback is a sharp word or a blow for your mistakes, this silent, peer-to-peer recognition is a powerful affirmation. This phenomenon of nonverbal communication in high-noise environments is something sociologists and historians find fascinating. It's a testament to human adaptability. Workers developed a complex shop floor culture that existed entirely outside the official power structure of the factory. This silent language was a form of resistance. It wasn't a rebellion, but it was a way of reasserting humanity, of creating a micro-community in a dehumanizing environment. The owners and overseers could control your body, your time, then your labor, but they couldn't fully control the subtle glances and gestures that passed between you. The debate among labor historians often revolves around how deep this solidarity went. Was it merely a pragmatic alliance for survival? A you watch my back, I'll watch yours arrangement, or did it represent the seeds of a true class consciousness? The beginning of workers seeing themselves as a group with a shared identity and shared interests. Distinct from their employers, some argue that these small, silent acts were the bedrock upon which the later trade union movements were built. Others maintain that for most workers, like you, it was far more personal and immediate a way to make an unbearable day a little more bearable. A curious and specific example of this silent language was the way workers would share information. They knew particularly cruel overseer might be given a silent nickname based on a physical quirk, a name communicated through gesture alone. Workers might develop a subtle hand signal to warn that the gaffer was in a particularly foul mood. This was the factory's secret grapevine, operating in plain sight but invisible to the authorities. There's no real camaraderie as we might imagine it. You don't laugh together. You don't share stories. The conditions are too harsh for that. The friendship is more like the tacit understanding between two soldiers in a trench. It's a bond forged, not in joy, but in shared endurance. Sometimes, a child at a nearby station will just disappear. One day they are there. The next day they are gone. Maybe they were fired. Maybe their family moved away. Or maybe they were injured. Their hand caught in the machinery. And they won't be coming back. There is no announcement. A new child, with the same wide, frightened eyes you once had, simply appears in their place. You and your silent friend might exchange a brief, somber glance. It's a look that acknowledges the precariances of your own existence. It says, that could have been you. That could have been me. This silent world of glances and gestures is your entire social life for 6 days a week. It's a fragile, flickering candle of human connection in the roaring, iron darkness of the factory. It doesn't make the work any less painful, or the day any shorter, but it makes the loneliness a little less absolute. Knowing that the person next to you is seeing the same things, feeling the same fears, and watching your back, it's a small, silent thread of friendship, as vital and as easily broken as the cotton ones you spend your days mending. You live under a sky that is rarely blue, even on a clear day. The horizon is smudged with a brownish-gray haze from the countless chimneys. But there are days when the sky disappears completely, swallowed by a phenomenon that is unique to your industrial city, the fog. This is not the clean, white, romantic mist of a country morning. This is a thick, yellow-brown, suffocating blanket that descends upon the city, a toxic marriage of natural sea fog and man-made industrial pollution. The locals have a name for it, pea super, for its thick, dense consistency, like a noxious, inedible soup. You wake up on a fog day and the world outside your small window is gone. There is only a murky, amber-tinged glow. The light that filters through is so weak that your mother might have to light a candle. Even in the middle of the day, the air in your room feels heavy and wet, and the familiar smell of coal smoke is 10 times stronger, so thick you can almost chew it. Going outside is like stepping into another world. Visibility is reduced to a few feet. The towering factory buildings across the street become faint, ghostly apparitions. People emerge from the gloom like specters and disappear back into it just as quickly. The soundscape of the city is transformed. The usual sharp clatter of carts and shouts is muffled and distorted, creating a strange, eerie quiet. The only sounds that seem to travel are the mournful, tolling bells of a church you can no longer see, or the low, moaning foghorns from ships lost on the polluted river. The walk to the factory is a treacherous journey. You have to navigate by memory, feeling your way along the walls of buildings, your feet shuffling carefully to avoid tripping on an unseen curb or stepping into a particularly deep puddle of filth. The fog has a taste and a smell. It's acrid and sulfurous, a chemical cocktail that stings your eyes and catches in the back of your throat. You develop the fog cough, a rasping, painful hack as your lungs try to expel the particles you're breathing in. This industrial smog was a deadly serious public health crisis. During major fog events, which could last for days, mortality rates in the city would skyrocket. The elderly, the very young, and those with pre-existing respiratory conditions like your neighbor with the constant cough were especially vulnerable. The sulfur dioxide in the smog, when combined with water vapor in the fog, created droplets of sulfuric acid. You were, in essence, breathing in a weak acid rain. Historians studying environmental history see these great smog gas as a turning point. For a long time, the smoke was seen as a positive sign, an unavoidable byproduct of prosperity. Where there's muck, there's brass, was a common saying. The smoke meant the factories were working, which meant people had jobs. The smog events of the 19th and 20th centuries, particularly the Great Smog of London in 1950, to which killed thousands, shattered this perception. They made it undeniably clear that the pollution was not just an inconvenience, it was a killer. This led to the first major pieces of clean air legislation, forcing factories to burn cleaner fuel or build taller chimneys to disperse the smoke. A curious and little-known side effect of the constant smog was the effect it had on the natural world within the city. The most famous example is the peppered moth. Originally, these moths were a pale, speckled color, perfectly camouflaged against the lichen-covered trees. As the industrial pollution killed the lichen and blackened the tree bark with soot, the pale moths became easy targets for birds. They were dark-colored variant of the moth, however, was now perfectly camouflaged. Over generations, the dark moths thrived while the pale ones were eaten, a classic, real-time example of natural selection, which scientists called industrial melanism. The very color of the animals was adapting to the pollution. Inside the factory, the fog is less dense, but the gloom is pervasive. The gas lamps have to be lit all day, casting a weak, flickering yellow light that creates more shadows than it dispels. The work is harder. Your eyes strain to see the fine white threads in the dim, soupy atmosphere. The air is thick with a combination of cotton dust and the fog that has seeped in through every crack and crevice. Your throat is raw, your eyes water, and your head aches from the fumes and the poor light. When the final bell rings and you step back out into the fog, it feels like the day has never really begun. Morning, noon, and night have all blended into one continuous, murky twilight. You have spent an entire day without seeing the sun, without seeing the sky, living and working inside a cloud of your own city's making. As you feel your way home through the silent, ghostly streets, the world feels unreal, like a bad dream. The fog isolates you, muffles the world, and makes you feel profoundly small and lost. It's a powerful, physical reminder of the price of the city's progress, a price that is paid with every rasping, painful breath you take. Wages are paid at the end of the long, hard week, usually on a Saturday. It's not a check, not a deposit into an account. It is cold, hard cash, a small pile of pennies and shillings handed over by a clerk or the overseer. For 12 hours of work a day, 6 days a week, your pay is pitiful. a few shillings at most. It's a tiny amount for a mountain of labor, but it's the greasy fuel that keeps your family's engine running. Most of this money is gone before you ever see it. It goes to your father, who then gives it to your mother. She is the family's chancellor of the exchequer, the one who performs the weekly miracle of stretching a few shillings to cover rent. Cool. And enough potatoes and oats to last until the next payday. The money is a current that flows through your hands but never pulls there. But sometimes, on a very rare occasion, a small miracle happened. Perhaps you worked a little faster, or fixed a particularly bad machine tangle without the overseer noticing. Or maybe the mill owner is feeling a flicker of magnanimity. The overseer might press a single, extra coin into your grimy palm. A penny. A single penny. It's not much. It can't buy a loaf of bread. It can't buy a pound of potatoes. But it is yours. It is not part of the family wage. It is a bonus, a reward. It is a piece of the world that belongs only to you. Holding it in your hand, the small, heavy, copper coin feels like the most valuable treasure on earth. Its possession creates an immediate, wonderful, and terrifying problem what to do with it. You can't just leave it in your pocket. Pockets have holes. Pockets can be picked. The first instinct is to hide it, to secure your new-found wealth. You get home, and with the stealth of a spy, you find your secret hiding place. It's not a piggy bank. It's a loose floorboard, a crack in the brick wall, or, most likely, a small tear you've carefully made in the seam of your lumpy straw mattress. You push the coin deep inside, into the dusty, scratchy interior. No one knows it's there. It's your secret. This act of hiding money, however small the amount, was a common practice in a world with no banks for the poor and no secure place to keep valuables. People became incredibly creative with their hiding spots. They'd hide coins in teapots, under hearts or sew them into the hems of their clothes. This created a strange, hidden economy within the home. A wife might have a secret egg money stash, saved from selling a few eggs or doing extra laundry, that her husband knew nothing about. It was a small measure of financial independence in a world that gave women very little. Historians who study working-class finances are fascinated by these informal saving strategies. The debate often revolves around what this saving represented. Was it purely for emergencies, a rainy day fund for when someone got sick and couldn't work, or was it aspirational? The hope, however faint, of saving enough to escape the slums, to buy a small plot of land, or to start a tiny business. For most, it was likely the former, but the dream of the latter, the dream of getting ahead, was a powerful motivator, even if it was rarely realized. For you and your single penny, the dream is much smaller. The penny in the mattress becomes a source of secret joy. At night, you might lie in bed and feel for it through the thin cloth. Its hard, round shape a comforting presence in the dark. You start to dream. What can you do with your incredible wealth? The possibilities are dazzling. You could buy a meat pie from a street vendor, a greasy, savory treat that you've only ever smelled. You could buy a handful of roasted chestnuts in the winter, or, the ultimate luxury, you could buy a piece of bright pink, sugary candy from the jar in the corner shop. This decision weighs on you for days. Spending the penny means the joy of the treat, but it also means the end of the penny itself. The potential it represents is almost more valuable than the thing it can buy. This is the classic dilemma of the poor, the choice between a small, immediate pleasure and the tiny bit of security that a single coin represents. One day, after a particularly hard week, you make your decision. You retrieve your coin. Your heart pounds as you walk to the small shop on the corner. You point a trembling, grimy finger at the jar of sweets. The shopkeeper counts out 2 small, sticky candies into your hand. You walk away, your treasure clutched in your fist. You don't eat it right away. You savor the anticipation. You find a quiet spot, away from other children who might try to steal it. You unwrap the candy. You put it in your mouth. The explosion of pure, uncomplicated sweetness is overwhelming. It's a sensation so alien to your daily diet of bland starches that it's almost a shock. For a few glorious seconds, the taste of sugar erases the grime, the noise, and the exhaustion. It is a moment of pure, selfish, decadent joy. And then it's gone. The candy is finished. Your penny is spent. Your mattress is empty again. Was it worth it? Absolutely. That one small coin, earned through your own labor and spent on your own pleasure, was a brief but powerful declaration of selfhood. It was a reminder that even in this vast, grinding machine of a city, you are not just a worker. You are a person with desires, dreams, and the ability to taste sweetness. You don't remember when it happened. There was no specific day, no single moment of revelation. It was a gradual change, as slow and imperceptible as the accumulation of soot on a brick wall. One day, you are walking down your street, the same street that assaulted your senses with its cocktail of sewage, rut, and smoke on your first day. Then you realize something startling. You don't smell it anymore. You pause for a second, consciously trying to inhale, to find the stench that once made you gag. It's there. If you concentrate, you can pick out the faint, sharp tang of ammonia from the gutters and the bitter undertone of coal smoke. But it's no longer an assault. It's just the air. It's the background noise of your senses, the default setting for your world. Your nose has surrendered. It has accepted this reality and stopped sending urgent, panic signals to your brain. The same thing has happened in the factory. The first time you walked into that weaving shed, the thunderous roar of the looms was a physical blow that left you deafened and disoriented. Now, the noise is still there, a constant pressure in your ears, but your mind has learned to build a wall around it. You can almost think, almost have a sliver of your own inner world, inside the bubble of quiet your brain has constructed. You've learned to live in the heart of the storm. This process is called sensory adaptation or habituation. It's a basic neural mechanism that allows us to filter out constant, unchanging stimuli so we can focus on new, important information like the overseer's approaching footsteps or the snap of a thread. It's a survival tool. If your brain registered every single sensation with the same intensity as it did on the first day, you would be in a constant state of overwhelming shock, unable to function. But this adaptation comes at a cost. In getting used to the filth, you lose the anger and disgust that it first inspired. In getting used to the noise, you lose a part of the quiet world you once knew. You are being shaped, not just physically by the labor and the lack of nutrition, but neurologically by your environment. Your brain is rewiring itself to survive in this unnatural world. Historians and sociologists who study urban adaptation are fascinated by this process. The central question they debate is whether this adaptation is a sign of resilience or a sign of resignation. Is it a testament to the incredible flexibility of the human spirit, its ability to find a way to endure even the most hostile conditions, or is it a form of psychological surrender, a dulling of the senses that makes people more accepting of their squalid lot, less likely to protest or demand change? There is no easy answer. It's likely both. Your habituation is what allows you to get up every morning and face the day without being crippled by sensory and emotional overload. It is a necessary shield, but that same shield can also blunt your perception of how wrong, how unhealthy, how inhuman your living conditions truly are. You no longer see the filth as an outrage, you see it as a mess to be navigated. You see this adaptation in the adults all around you. You see it in your mother, who can cook a meal while seemingly oblivious to the damp patch of mold growing on the wall nearby. You see it in your father, who no longer flinches at the scream of a factory whistle. They have been here longer. Their shields are thicker. A stringent specific manifestation of this can be seen in the changing aesthetics of the time. As industrial landscapes became the norm, some artists and writers began to find a new, terrible kind of beauty in them. They wrote about the romance of the factory at night, its windows blazing with light, They painted the fiery glow of the blast furnaces against the dark sky. They were, in their own way, becoming habituated, finding ways to process and even celebrate an environment that was, by any objective measure, a catastrophe. They were learning not to 捂住鼻子捂住鼻子 to not cover their nose. You notice it most acutely when a new family arrives from the countryside, just as yours once did. You see them on their first day, their faces a mask of shock and disgust. You see them flinch at the noise, wrinkle their noses at the smell, their eyes wide with a horror that you now only dimly remember feeling yourself. You see your own past in their faces, and you realize how much you have changed. You are no longer the child from the green fields who was overwhelmed by the city. You are a creature of the city. Its sounds, its smells, its grime are a part of you. You have learned the city's language of survival, and the first word in that language is endure. You have stopped 捂住鼻子捂住鼻子 not because the smell has gone away, but because you have, in a strange and sad way, become a part of it. The day ends as it always does. In exhaustion, you have dragged your body home through the dark streets, eaten your bowl of potatoes, and now you lie on the lumpy straw mattress, curled up against the familiar warmth of your family. The tiny room is dark, save for the faint red glow of the dying embers in the stove. The sounds of the city are distant. Muffled tremble. Sleep is close, a heavy blanket waiting to pull you under. Your mind, finally free from the demands of the factory and the vigilance of the streets, begins to drift. It's in this hazy, half-conscious state between waking and sleeping that the memories sometimes come. They are not sharp, clear recollections. They are more like watercolor paintings, faded and blurry at the edges. A flash of brilliant, impossible green, not the grimy, soot-stained green of the city park, but a deep, vibrant green that seems to go on forever. It's the color of the fields after a rain, a memory so potent it almost has a smell, the clean, earthy scent of damp soil and growing things. You remember lying in the grass, the blades cool against your cheek, watching the clouds drift in a vast, open, blue sky, a sky without a single chimney. Another image surfaces, the rough, warm texture of a pig's back as you herded across the common pasture, the way the sun felt on your shoulders, a genuine, unfiltered warmth, not the weak, hazy light that struggles through the city's smog. You remember the silence, a quiet so deep that you could hear the buzz of a bee and the rustle of leaves in a gentle wind, a quiet that feels like a fantasy now. These are not coherent stories. They are fragments, sensory ghosts from a life that feels like it belonged to someone else. It was a life of hardship. You know that. There was hunger and uncertainty in the countryside, too. But your memory, in this drowsy state, chooses to smooth over those rough edges. It remembers the green, the sun, and the quiet. This nostalgia for a lost rural past is a powerful theme in the art and literature of the industrial age. Poets wrote mournful verses about the loss of the pastoral ideal. Painters created idealized landscapes of bucolic harmony, even as the reality was being paved over with brick and stone. It was a collective cultural response to a profound and rapid dislocation. Millions of people, like you, worked off from a way of life that had defined humanity for millennia. Historians debate the accuracy of this golden age version of the countryside. Was rural life really so idyllic? Or was this a romanticized fiction created by people confronting the new horrors of the city? The reality, most scholars agree, was much more complex. The countryside was a place of back-breaking labor, rigid social hierarchies, and desperate poverty. But it was also a world governed by the rhythms of nature, not the factory bell. The debate is about whether the trade-off, the exchange of one set of hardships for another, was worth it. For you, drifting off to sleep, the complexities don't matter. Your dreaming mind latches onto the simplest, most powerful contrasts: green versus gray, quiet versus Noise, sun versus smoke. A strange detail from this period is how this sense of a lost, natural world manifested in small, sad ways in the city. People would go to great lengths to keep a small plant alive on a windowsill, a tiny patch of green against the endless brick. They might keep a caged bird, a linnet or a finch, its song a faint, tragic echo of the open fields, a sound almost always drowned out by the noise of the street. These small acts were a way of holding on to a piece of the world that had been taken from them. Your breathing deepens. The images in your mind begin to blur and merge. The rhythmic clatter of the looms from the factory floor transforms into the sound of rain on a cottage roof. The shouted orders of the overseer soften into your mother's voice, calling you in from the fields. The harsh, grimy reality of your present life is being gently overwritten by the soft, faded memories of your past. This is your final escape. It's a journey you take every night. You can't escape the city. You can't escape the factory. But in the last moments before sleep claims you, you can, for a little while, go home. You can find that one, tiny, precious patch of green in the vast, grail landscape of your mind. It is a memory of a world you have lost, a dream of a place that, even as it fades, feels more real than the hard mattress beneath you and the smoky air you breathe. The coal smoke from the stove has become the wood smoke from a country hearth. And in that final, drowsy thought, you are finally at peace, adrift in the green, quiet fields of a half-forgotten dream. And so, you sleep. The world of red brick and black smoke dissolves, its sharp edges softening into the indistinct shapes of a dream. The relentless rhythm of the machines fades into the gentle, steady rhythm of your own breathing. The city, with all its noise and its fury, its sorrows and its smells, can't reach you here. You are drifting now, on a quiet river, not the dark, polluted river of the city, but a cool, clear stream that whispers over smooth stones. The air is clean and sweet, and the light that filters through the leaves of the great old trees is dappled and soft. There is no urgency here, no bells to answer, no threads to mend. Let the gentle current carry you. Feel the last of the day's tension release from your shoulders, from your hands, from the tired arches of your feet. Every breath you take is easy and slow, drawing you deeper into this place of rest. The story is over. The day is done. All that is left is this moment of perfect, peaceful stillness, just the quiet hum of the night, and the slow, steady beat of your own peaceful heart. You are safe. You are drifting. You are dreaming now. The end of the article. Good night.